Welcome to Education Resource Night, Angel City Virtual Games presented by the Hartford. And we're going to kick off this evening with our founder, Clayton Freck. We're ready to go right now if you are, Clayton.
I am as ready as I will ever be. I wore my jacket today. I would be dressed up for this night if we were at UCLA. So welcome everyone. I'm really, really honored to have everybody here tonight and to have this incredible crew of speakers and panelists. As Stacy said, my name is Clayton Freck. I'm the CEO and founder of Angel City Sports. Listen, this organization was just a dream around, the dining room table 7 years ago. And here we are. I'm really grateful to our staff and our volunteers and coaches and everybody that's kind of helped create what we have. And as Stacy mentioned, tonight is Resource Night, part of week 3 of the very ambitious Angel City Virtual Games presented by the Hartford. If you didn't tune in to the Resource Nights in week 1 and week 2, we covered health and wellness the first week, and then we covered kind of career planning and career development in week 2. And tonight is all about education as really a cornerstone for your life, for your career. And we have resources, starting through kindergarten and then on up. So we're really excited for all the panelists. So I like to say, and it really is the truth, that this is my favorite night of the games. And those of you that have been to the real games, the last couple of years, it's been 4 days, 3 big special events. And last year we did our first resource night. And I like this night more than the celebrity wheelchair basketball game because tonight is about finding ways to improve your life. And one of the things that I like to talk to my son Ezra and other athletes about is we can't really change the fact that you have a disability. In Ezra's case, he was born different. But can we find ways to sort of, what I like to say is slingshot your disability into an advantage? And tonight is an effort by our team, our amazing team, to help you do that. And so we're bringing together all these really amazing speakers and panelists with incredible careers and perspectives. And they're volunteering their time to be a mentor and a coach and a supporter for all of you, our athletes. And so that's why I love this night, because it's really about building a community, supporting each other to achieve our dreams, both on and off the field of play. So without further ado, I get to introduce Bob Babbitt, and he's going to introduce Hunter. So Bob, if you read his resume, it's amazing. The guy has started so many important organizations like the Challenged Athletes Foundation. I'll share a little bit about that. He started Competitor Magazine, Muddy Buddy. He's got his own podcast now. The guy is a real entrepreneur and really like a social impact entrepreneur, which is even more near and dear to my heart. And I will tell you, he's been a friend of mine and our families for over about 15 years, because we brought Ezra down to the San Diego Triathlon Challenge when Ezra was 5 months old. And, we were just carrying this baby around, asking for any ideas on how to raise this little guy. And I have to tell you, Bob really welcomed us almost like we were family. He's always been there for us if we needed a chat or a call or any kind of support. He was one of the first people I let know that I was considering starting Angel City Sports, and he was very supportive. In fact, he'll remember this. He called me up one day and goes, "Got to add swimming to the games. Mm-hmm. We need an elite, not elite, but like a prestigious swim event. Let's add it." And so he's just been an incredible supporter, mentor, and friend of mine and friend of our families and of Angel City. And so, and I, you know, when we thought about, when we talked to Hunter about being our keynote tonight, and you guys are going to fall in love with Hunter, just like everybody does, including his, you know, hundreds of thousands of fans on social media. But Bob also has a really pivotal role in Hunter's career. And so I'm sure the two of them are going to talk about that, but it's just, you know, it's just another example of Bob's approach to, you know, kind of his role on the planet, which is if there's somebody that could use a little help, a leg up, pun intended, whatever we need, Bob is there for us. And obviously he's created CAF with his amazing team, and they're helping thousands of athletes a year now. I mean, the scale is incredible. So, you know, just beyond honored to know Bob. And Bob, I'm going to let you take it away. But just thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do for our amazing community. You know, we wouldn't be where we are as a community without you. So take it away, Bob.
Thanks so much, Clayton, and congratulations to everything you guys have done. When we first started talking about Angel City Games, I remember you saying, why am I flying to Oklahoma in the middle of tornado country to have my kid run against other kids when I live in LA and I don't have to worry about tornadoes? And that was the genesis of what you've created, which has been amazing. I've been up there the last number of basically pretty much every year, I think. And it's very, very special. And one thing that we have in common is we both believe through Challenge Athletes Foundation and through Angel City Games, the power of sport. Sport changes lives for the better. And when I had Competitor Magazine, and I heard about this young man named Hunter Woodhall, who was a double below-knee amputee, and was a track star, I decided that I needed to go see him run in Utah. So I flew out to Utah and went to Syracuse High School, and they're having a track meet, and I watched Hunter win the 400 overall, wins the 400. And then all of a sudden, you know, one of the last events is going to be the 4x1, and I see I'm like, what's going on? So I go down to the track, and a bolt had come out of Hunter's leg, and you see the trainer with a roll of duct tape. And he takes his roll of duct tape and wraps it around Hunter's leg to replace the bolt. And then Hunter goes off and wins anchors the 4x100. So here's a kid who's ranked #1 in Utah in the quarter mile. He's ranked top 20 in the country. And I have him on my radio show to chat about, you know, what he's going to be doing, where is he going to go to college, and the upcoming Paralympics. And he goes, I don't have any college offers. I'm like, wait, what? You're ranked #1 in Utah, top 20 in the country, and you don't have any offers? He goes, nope. So I called a buddy of mine named Tracy Sunland, founder of Rock and Roll Marathon, who has a track meet in New York for high school kids in the Armory. He invites Hunter to the track meet. And this just goes to show you never know where things are going to go. Hunter runs in that track meet. New York Times writes an article about this kid and why he has no scholarship offers, being top 20 in the country. And next thing you know, Hunter is getting scholarship offers from all over the country, and he becomes like a football or basketball player. He puts the 5 college hats out in front of him and picks up University of Arkansas and says, this is where I'm going to college. And what's great about that is at that point, Hunter became the first double amputee to get a Division I track and field scholarship. And every time I'm together with some of our younger kids, and I mention Hunter Woodhall's name, they know.
We asked Bob to try to dial back in.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear us, Bob, but your video has stopped and we're not hearing you now.
Went dark.
He was saying too many nice things about me. It was just too much for the system.
He was just getting started.
I know. It's just, man, it's too much.
I think he's gone.
Yeah, I'm gonna look on my list.
Am I there?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hey, there he is.
There.
Oh my God. Where did I go on? Where did I cut out? At the beginning.
Arkansas, he won the award at Arkansas.
Yo, yo, yo. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Bob.
Okay, God, sorry about that. So without further ado, the gentleman who's going to go off and win a gold medal at the Paralympics in Tokyo next year, the one, the only, Mr. Hunter Woodhall.
What I was saying before is I just wanted to kind of connect the dots between, me and CAF and Angel City Games and how we all kind of came together because, when I was younger, I didn't really know that much about, the Paralympic movement, that kind of sports that went, that direction. I was always on the able-bodied side and more often than not, it's just an educational thing. And I didn't have that, in my life. And, I was also at the CAF event. The San Diego Triathlon was the first time, and I met Ezra and his whole family, and got involved with CAF and Angel City Games. And looking back, I've kind of seen a lot of points in my life where if I had that one person in my life, if I had that Bob Babbitt, if I had somebody who was just there to you kind of push me forward and say, hey, I believe in you, you can do this. It would have made a lot of those things a lot easier. And I think that's why it's so important to have, an organization and an event like Angel City Games is just to bring a community together, bring people together. Because a lot of times all it takes is just knowing that there's somebody behind you, knowing there's someone who sees your value and sees, how important and amazing you are. And that kind of leads into a lot of what I want to talk to you guys about tonight, which is, I don't want anyone in this Zoom call to see yourself or anybody else that has a disability as something that's a problem with them, something that's, hindering their life, something that's, making it harder to reach their goals, when in reality, the disability or the things that make you different are what make you so special. And, I definitely wouldn't be in front of you speaking. I definitely wouldn't be, where I am in my life if I hadn't lost my legs when I was a child. And, I don't want to speak about my past too much as the present and education and getting into school and stuff. But when I was a year old, I had a birth defect, which, caused doctors to think that I would never be able to walk, as I'm sure is similar with a lot of, people that you've met and the stories you've heard. But, growing up, it was always this idea that a lot of times throughout my life, it's been more of this idea of, I'm going to hand you something. This is what you're going to be able to do with your life. And if you want to do something else, it's not really going to happen. And, just having a good support group around my family, my friends, and then growing up, meeting new people like Bob and Clayton and all these people, you start to realize that your life can be what you make it. Your goals are what you think of. The sky's the limit. It's cliche to say, but, a lot of cliche things are cliche because they're true. And, for me, one of the things was that I was always in the mindset that I wanted to prove those people wrong. The people that told me, what was possible. I wanted to create my own destiny, create my own future for myself. And, going through junior high, I started playing sports and I started doing the things I wanted to do, and I wasn't good at all. I was always in the back of the pack. I was never really a standout athlete. And a lot of times I would see people in the crowd clapping for me, even though I would be last or, just not competing the way I wanted to be. And I always wondered why. And in my head, I kind of said, hey, it's because people just see me as a kid with a disability and not as an athlete. And I said, well, what can I do to change that? And then I shifted my mindset of, let me not do this for other people. Let me not do this for whoever's in the stands or any of this. Let me do this for myself. Let me become happy with myself. Let me become self-confident in the things I do. And moving forward from that point, that was always my goal. It doesn't matter what somebody else thinks about you. It doesn't matter what somebody else says. It matters what you want to do with your life, what you want to make of your life, what the goals are you have. And one of those goals for me was competing at a collegiate track program. And, going through high school, I started to see a little bit of, potential. I started to get a little bit better. And, my first international competition was World Championships in 2015 in Qatar. And I remember showing up and just seeing all these big names in the Paralympic world and being like, wow, I'm out of my league right now. These guys are amazing. And, it was just back to that spot where I just didn't really believe in myself. And it took some people behind me to say, hey, you got this. And, I came out as a medalist, and it pushed me forward to Rio in 2016, where, again, I was the youngest person in my event. I was nervous. I was scared. I felt like I was out of my element. And again, it was just somebody behind me that says, hey, you got this, keep going, keep pushing forward. And, you know, I ended up getting a bronze and a silver, and we had a gold medal in the 4x1. And unfortunately that got kind of snatched from us for a technicality. But, you know, I say all of these things not because I want to, you know, talk about my accomplishments as a track athlete or talk about where I've been, but just as I'm sure a lot of you or your friends or family have heard of what you will and will not be able to do with your life, I also heard those things. And the reason I tell you this is just to show you that whatever you want to do with your life, whatever direction you want to go, it's up to you. It's in your hands. And I can say that because I know I've been there and I know how hard it is. And I want you guys to understand that anybody in this call, especially you know, the people working with and at Angel City Games and CAF, they're resources for you. Going through the recruiting process, as Bob, you know, mentioned, was extremely difficult for me. It was 5 years of every single day, every single weekend, every single meal, every single summer where I should be hanging out with my friends, dedicated to an end goal, which was running in college. And when the time came and when I was ready to receive those calls and those offers, nothing came. And it was pretty heart-wrenching. It was tough. And without the people around me, the support group, I definitely wouldn't have made it to the University of Arkansas or you know, really any Division I school at that point. But, you know, I also wanted to talk about just the importance of education and using what you have in your life as, you know, a tool to move forward. And, you know, there's so many different avenues, there's so many different things, and whatever you want to do, it's hard to put into words like how possible it is. And I hope what I'm saying is kind of conveying that. But, you know, one of the things is that, and me and Ezra have talked about this a lot, is just like, you don't have to do the same thing as everybody else. So just because this was my path, this is what I did, that doesn't mean that has to be what you want to do. But the importance of finding a way, finding your path to education, to, you know, your goals in sports or anything, is just, it's paramount to so many things. But, you know, I it's hard to say, but I just want to tell you guys, dream big, keep following your dreams, keep chasing. And I would love to hear from some other people, any questions about, you know, whether it's college or running track at that level or getting into school or anything like that. But I'm just, yeah, let me be a resource. Let me help out anybody I can. I don't really know where else to go from there. It's interesting speaking to a computer rather than faces, but.
That's okay. That's great. Hunter, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your amazing story and your journey.
Thanks for having me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jody, and I am a volunteer with Angel City Sports. Thank you all so much for joining us for Education Resource Night at Angel City Games, sponsored by the Hartford. Before we begin, we would like to thank our sponsors, the Hartford, Ampla Partners, Citibank, Move United, and Adaptive Apps for their generous contributions to Angel City Virtual Games. We are truly grateful for their support. This evening, we have 2 breakout sessions we are excited to bring to you. So now let's talk about our hosts and our panelists. So as you can see, these are our amazing panelists. The hosts for the Financing Your Education will be Sue Rossi. You can see where she's Executive Director, Adaptive Sports USA Move United. We also have Darlene Hunter. She's our Assistant Professor in Social Work, University of Texas at Arlington, Paralympian, Team USA Women's Wheelchair Basketball Team. We have Tom Glassberg. He's Treasurer of Antonio V. Glassberg Educational Foundation. And we have Debbie McFadden, former U.S. Commissioner of Disabilities. She's mother of Paralympians Tatiana and Hannah McFadden. That's our first room. Our second room, this will be Choosing Your College Path. Our host will be Eric Mockover. He's an independent consultant, Eric Mockover Educational Consulting. Joining him will be Sherry Blowett. She's Assistant Professor of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, Harvard Medical School, Sports Medicine Physician at the Brigham Women's Hospital and Spalding Rehabilitation Hospital. She's a former Paralympic athlete, wheelchair racing, 3 Paralympic Games, and 7 Paralympic medals. Good for her. Then we have Alex Lawrence, Assistant Dean, Director of MBA Admissions and Financial Aid. Okay, Clayton just popped up. I can't read it. Is that UCLA?
Yeah, UCLA School of Management, Anderson
School of Management. Okay, a chat just popped up over it when I was just about to read it. And finally, we have Dr. Michael Cottingham. He's with Associate, and I can't read it, Associate
Professor of Sport Administration, Director of Adaptive Athletics, University of Houston.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you. All right, so these are our panelists that you're going to be interacting with and listening to in both our sessions. So now, at this time, we're going to send you all an invite to join the first breakout session.
As Jody had mentioned in the opening, I'm the Executive Director of Adaptive Sports USA, and I see a lot of faces and names I don't know, so just want to make sure, if you didn't hear our announcement in May, we are merging with what was Disabled Sports USA under the new brand Move United. Adaptive sports and recreation for 20 plus years, and I love it, and I love all of the people in this community out there. And I think there's no doubt we all know the power of sport and how much sport opens doors and leads to different opportunities and possibilities. And I'm really honored to be here tonight. Move United has been supporting Angel City virtual games presented by the Hartford this summer. And I'm sure you guys have jumped into different things and just had a great time. So I'm thrilled to be with the panelists tonight to talk about education. Sport, again, can open doors to education, and education can lead to so many great things. So without further ado, we have 3 panelists tonight that are going to speak on everything from K-12 education and college education and the finances that go with it. So I'm going to kick it off to Tom. If you could share a little bit about yourself and your organization and the background, that would be fantastic.
Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Tom Glassberg. I'm here representing the Antonio V. Glassberg Educational Foundation, which was started by my son, Antonio, when he was 23, shortly before he died of cancer. We provide tuition scholarships to support physically challenged students to attend K through 12 private schools. And we've been doing this since Antonio died, which was 19 and a half years ago. And we've penetrated into about 35 states. We've supported about 150 different students and at probably 80 different private schools. So I'll keep it brief and answer questions later.
Thank you, Tom. How about you, Debbie?
Sure. So I'm Debbie McFadden. I'm the former U.S. Commissioner of Disabilities, one of the original 12 authors of the ADA. Let's see, what else? I am the mother of Tatiana and Hannah. I've somehow lost my name around there other than being that. I'm currently the CEO of Competitive Edge. I help students get funding for college. And to date, I thought I'd hit $19 million in October, and I hit it this month. And a little bit about me. I was paralyzed from the neck down in graduate school. I was in an electric wheelchair for 4 years and crutches 8 years. So I've seen, I guess, personally, professionally, and now as a parent, all sides of it.
Thank you, Debbie. And we will hear more in just a bit. Darlene, can you tell us a little bit about your background and experience?
So my name is Darlene Hunter. I actually started sports when I was 7. I was a track athlete. And so I went to the University of Arizona to do track there because I was originally from Michigan and did not want to be in the cold weather anymore. And then ended up at UTA. I got my PhD from Texas Women's University. So I came back and am a professor at UTA and just help adaptive athletes get to college one way or another. So through sports or just to get their education. I'm very involved in the adapted sports world and a Paralympian.
Paralympian in what sport for those that don't know you, Darlene?
So I did 2012 and 2016 for women's wheelchair basketball, and we won gold in 2016. So it was a really fun year.
Awesome.
And now waiting for Tokyo. So
fantastic. Fantastic. I have some questions I'm going to ask these panelists, but please use your chat box as well if you think of anything you want to know throughout our time here. Going back to you, Tom, can you tell us why your son Antonio created the Antonio V. Glassberg Educational Foundation?
Well, briefly, and this is explained in more detail in our website, Antonio went to a private elementary school through 6th grade, after which we moved. We moved to Jackson Hole, and then he went to public school, Jackson Hole High School. But when he was in elementary school, he was friends with a little boy, and they used to spend time together and visited each other's house. And when Antonio came home from school the first day of 5th grade, he was pretty upset because this young friend of his didn't show up. And it was apparent to everyone that it was because his family couldn't afford the tuition any longer and the school's offer of a scholarship was insufficient. So that was when Antonio was about 9 or 10. And then fast forwarding, when Antonio was 16 and a senior year in high school, he was in his senior year in high school, we found out he had cancer. And 6.5 years later, after having every treatment known, became apparent that there was no treatment left. He was then 23. And he told me that he had some funds that I had invested when he was born that had done well. And he told me he wanted to start a foundation because it had always bothered him that this little boy didn't show up in 5th grade and they kind of lost touch with each other. And he wanted to start a foundation to prevent that from happening to as many kids as possible. And so he started this foundation. We met with a lawyer and he set it all up. And a few months later, Antonio did pass away. And we've now been doing this for, as I said, about 19.5 years. So it's been a real labor of love. There's 5 of us directors, the other 4 of whom were childhood friends of Antonio's. So they're exactly the age he would be. And it's a great opportunity for me to hang out with these kids that Antonio grew up with, all of whom have been very successful. And our organization is strictly volunteer. We don't fundraise. We've never had a penny of administrative or organizational expenses. And we hope to be doing this for many more decades.
Thank you, Tom. And if anyone on this session here, or if they know somebody that's K through 12, how would they go about applying for a scholarship or getting access to those funds that are available?
Great question. We have a website. It's antonioglassbergfoundation.org. If you forget that, you can Google Antonio's Foundation or Glassberg Foundation. And don't let your inability to find us on the web or on our Facebook page, don't let that dissuade you. As a last resort, just contact Stacy or Clayton and they can put you in touch with me.
And this is not limited to any geographic area or anything, correct, Tom?
Anywhere in the United States. And I would also mention that while quite a few of our students have Paralympic classifications, we do not look for athletic participation or athletic accomplishments or abilities. That's not something that is needed to qualify for a tuition grant. All that's really needed is the wherewithal to get admitted to a private school. We don't help the student get into the school because we're all over the US. We don't have relationships with all these schools. And for students who have physical challenges with financial need.
Awesome. Fantastic. The mission of what you all do in the organization and the purpose is spectacular, and hopefully some people are tapping into it, especially on this call right now. I'm going to move to Darlene over there, Miss Hunter. Since you were an adaptive athlete who received a scholarship, can you explain a little bit about your experience when you were in school?
So actually, I didn't receive a scholarship when I started. U of A was just starting off with their program. So we worked, we were one of the founding groups that came in 2001 and like worked to get their out-of-state tuition waivers and really get their program going so that we could have those opportunities in the future. I'm sorry, my dog's barking in the background. And so that was one of the big things. But then when I moved to UTA and played wheelchair basketball, I did get a scholarship to go there. And so, of course, it makes things a lot easier when you can just tie sports in with it. But I also, for my PhD and undergraduate, I worked through college as assistant or like as TAs and GAs to pay my way. So I had a little different story, and that's why like I work really hard now to help people get funding.
And I know because I'm a fan of yours on Facebook and I follow how much of an advocate you are for kids these days. What are some things you know that are out there that exist across the country as far as college scholarships?
So I think everybody thinks that, you know, all of these basketball schools and track schools will give you full ride scholarships and there's just all this money just to do sports. And if you show up and you're a good athlete, that will work. We always tell people to, you know, get really good grades in high school so that you can get academic scholarships so that you could go to any college you want. And it's not relied on just how your athletics are. But Swim with Mike is a good one. We have some we do voc rehab. Each state has their own it's a federally funded program that can help. We have academic scholarships. There's Medical 180 that does a scholarship. And we just a lot of times work with our athletes, see what their disabilities are, and target those kind of grants. So there's a lot out there for grants, scholarships, but a lot of it is in your control. If you just do really good in school and study and get good grades, it makes things a lot easier.
Fantastic. And that's pretty amazing back in, you said 2001, to pave the way for future athletes to have some more support. Fantastic. And Miss Debbie over there, it sounds like you have experience with federal financial aid. Can you explain how that process works or what exists out there?
Sure. So I work with students around the country. There's two programs. One is SSI and the other is vocational rehabilitation. SSI is, those of you that are on this that have worked for years, you would get SSDI if you became disabled because you've paid into the system. SSI if you've not worked. Pretty much anybody who has a disability, pretty much, I can help them get about $9,000 in cash a year for the rest of their life until they work. Which means, and I always figure people go to school for 5 years in college, so that's $45,000 in cash. And then, so that's one program. The other program is voc rehab. Voc rehab, we say, oh, you know, I would like to be X. And, you know, I want to be a teacher. If you want to be a teacher, you've got to go to college and you've got to get a bachelor's degree. And of course you need room and board and we need your books. So I work with getting voc rehab to pay for tuition, room, board, and books. The programs are somewhat tricky in that how you have to apply for it. I like having people apply for SSI first because it's a golden ticket. If you get approved for SSI, you get approved for voc rehab, not the reverse. But it's tricky, and how you answer these things will determine whether you're approved for it. And you never ever lie, ever, on anything, but you answer in a particular way. For example, my daughter Tatiana, the entire state, she's not on it now, but the entire state of Maryland knew her. She's, you know, got the muscles, she travels all over, but the definition of spina bifida is that you cannot do things. And it's not how you accommodate and get better, but spina bifida will never get better. Or my other daughter, Hannah, she's an amputee, her leg won't grow back. So it's very important how you answer that. But in applying for both these programs, that will help. And as Darlene said, if you can get a scholarship in school, if you're going out of state, you can get the whole thing covered. I was on the phone with University of Arizona today, and one of the applicants has a $39 bill this semester. So these are important programs that as the kids get ready for college or in high school, we want to apply for, because I want everybody to come out debt free.
Absolutely. So Debbie, the names of those federal programs again sounded like vet rehab.
It's supplemental Social Security income, and the other one goes by different names. VOC Rehab, Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, Rehabilitation Services, Texas Workforce. My company helps people across the United States to apply for these programs, and our success rate is 100%, but probably because I helped write the regs. But they are offered in every single place in the United States. But I have to say, it is important to get good grades. Now, these Social Security is not predicated on good grades, but certainly VOC Rehab is.
And just my personal question from hearing you, is there a certain timeline of how far ahead you need to start on those kind of processes?
Yeah. Well, the people I work with, I want to start talking to them when they're in high school, and then when they're 17, I want to talk to the parents. So about 6 months out, I want to get all the forms ready so that when they're 18. So I target the month after they turn 18. And the reason 18 is important is because you're no longer on your parents' income. You are considered an adult then. So, but again, how you answer these questions it's tricky, because as parents, we're so proud of our kids. They can do anything. But it's how they're asking this. For example, my daughter Hannah, who's an amputee, if you ask Hannah, can you walk? She goes, of course I can walk. But the answer is no, you can't. Oh, how do you get around? Oh, prosthetic leg. So it's one wrong answer can follow you up on this. And so people who say they applied and were denied, I can probably guess why they were denied. They answered the questions wrong. But yeah, 17 is a good time to start talking about it. And at 17 and a half, we're working on it aggressively.
Thank you.
But you come out debt free.
And can I just add on to Deborah, is that if you get hurt later in life, you can still qualify for VOC Rehab and SSDI and SSI. So
absolutely.
It doesn't at just like 17. Just wanted to make sure when we go, like it's not an age group on it.
No, as a matter of fact, some people qualify prior to 18, depending on the family's income. But after 18, you're on your own. But you can be 50 and have an acquired disability, and you definitely qualify for it. Although you probably get SSDI. So yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Tom, back to you. And you're experiencing working with all these scholarships you've offered over the years. Is there some benefits that you've heard people express, or ways that they've really gravitated to the private school system versus public that you want to communicate to the group?
One word: bullying. I always ask the parents with whom I speak, why do you want your child in private school? And the answer is always the same: bullying. In addition, we kind of flesh that out on a page in our website that is entitled Why Private School, and actually Clayton helped us write that. And so just briefly, I got to thinking about that bullying thing quite a bit. And so I got an appointment with the principal of a public school, and we talked about bullying, and I said, why can't you control this? And he told me, the most thing we can do is kick a kid who's bullying out of school. What's going to happen? He's just going to go to another public school and continue to be a bully. If you talk to the headmaster of these private schools, they can control bullying. It's really as simple as that.
Thank you. And Darlene, I know you work with a lot of kids in Texas and the basketball teams and everything. For an up-and-coming student athlete, how would you suggest they evaluate their scholarship options?
I always say that if you get hurt tomorrow and you can't play your sports anymore, are you still going to enjoy going to that college? Too many people pick a college based on scholarship or based on basketball or track, or, you know, Arizona has multiple different sports out there. But if you get hurt, are you still going to want to be there? Are you, because with us, anything can happen at any time, and you want to still enjoy that experience and to find a school that you enjoy whatever degree you're going to get from it. People choose to go to a college, but then the degree that they really want in life isn't there. Sports is a tool to get you farther in life. It is not life. And so it's really important that you take the opportunity. We always tell our students, this is your opportunity to be able to have a really comfortable rest of your life. Don't blow it because, you know, you're doing something else. And so it's really important that you pick a college that first meets the educational needs that you want. What do you want your degree to be? And then sports comes after, because at any given time, like we're in COVID right now, we don't even know if we're going to have a season. So are you still enjoying that college even though you don't have a season? And unfortunately, that's where we are right now, right? A lot of these colleges are sitting around waiting to see if their athletes will even be able to participate. So it's really important that you pick a degree that you love and you want to do, and not just go for sports.
Thank you. And to all three of you, do any of you have expertise or experience in more traditional scholarships, whether they be academic or otherwise, that we haven't mentioned?
I do not. But
I know a lot of our students do like GoFundMe pages, or, you know, start preparing that kind of thing early, and that's how they get some additional grants and or funding for them, is asking just for help from their local people.
And for me, remember, if the students that I work with, if you go in your state, we're getting your tuition, room, board, and books covered. So if you go out of state, then you need to come up with a differential for the out of state costs. Although, like Darlene said, there's some out of state waivers. Some we can waive the out of state cost, or there's scholarships for that. But you know, if you have a disability, going to college is certainly can be funded, but you got to keep your grades up to go to college. So it's not all about sport. And I really like what you said, Darlene. You know, choose a college that you're proud of to be there in case you're injured. You know, the kids that I'm helping are going all over the United States, and in a number of different colleges, although, you know, it's heavy on the sports colleges. And I'm trying to work hard with all of the colleges to help them get these programs, because it's a good recruiting tool as well.
Thank you, Debbie. And from all three of you, I know we don't know everyone on the session here, but if you were to give advice to these individuals as well as those out there, I know you've already given some, what would that be to navigate the system?
Don't procrastinate. I think everybody thinks that, you know, like we all are really big in procrastination and, oh, it will just happen. It is very hard if you don't apply early to get you into a college and then get all that funding that we're talking about. The earlier you apply, the more opportunities you get for scholarships. I mean, working with Texas Workforce Commission here, we work with them a lot, but if you don't give them enough time, it's really hard to get that first semester under your belt with them, funding everything. It's like those kind of systems are federal. You know, we know how federal systems work, right? It's not quick. So it's really about being early and not procrastinating. And I think that that's the biggest piece of advice, is like, do things early.
Thanks, Darlene. Debbie, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say also remember, you need to apply for FAFSA for your kids, and each of the colleges, you can go on their website and they'll tell you, here's the deadline. I have a student I talked to yesterday, and he goes, oh, my parents applied last week. Well, can I get funding? You've missed the deadline. You can get funding, but not now. And that also, when we talk about funding, there are the Pell Grants. So depending on what the government says your income is, they will determine, as you fill out your financials, your tax forms. They may say, oh, your student qualifies for $6,000 towards their college, and you don't have to pay it back. So definitely fill out the FAFSA form.
Thank you.
I wanted to comment that many of, maybe even most of our grantees go to schools which have never had a physically challenged student in the school. And I cannot tell you the number of headmasters who have contacted me and said, you won't believe the impact this child has had on our school community. And I think your question really dealt earlier with other sources of financial aid. Some of these schools, they're practically crying out to keep our students year after year because the students have had such an inspirational impact on the student body. In addition, obviously a lot of private schools offer financial aid, and we do request that our families apply for financial aid from the schools or any other sources such as their church or archdiocese or parish prior to our supplementing what they can get from other schools. Not all schools offer financial aid. Most of the expensive schools do. Some of the religious affiliated schools don't offer financial aid because their tuition is already so low because they're subsidized by their religious organization.
Thank you, Tom. And I haven't seen the chat. Is there any questions from you all that we want to ask these three or anyone in particular?
I don't see any particular ones in the chat, but if anyone has questions they'd like to ask, if we'd like to open up question and answer, you can unmute yourself.
I just have a little bit about, it seems like it's really going to depend on the schools you're looking at, the timeline and the application process and in that. But is there any cheat sheets out there that that have, you know, all the resources or starting points or general timelines that you guys have come across?
I know the National Wheelchair Basketball Association has like a junior meeting at the end of every season, and they lay out what you should do in each year to prepare you. So that's on their website as like one of their college, I'd have to find it, but it's on their website. But I think the other thing is that your school counselors should be helping you with when to take ACTs, SATs, those kind of things, which are all requirements of getting into college. We're talking about financial part, but you also got to do that other part to get you into college is meeting the admissions requirements. And so that's part A, I think, is getting that SAT or ACT. So I don't think there is a list. I know within the adapted sports communities, we try to share as much information, but I don't know if there's actually like a guide of how to. Deborah would probably be a better one with her business.
Darlene's just right on it when she says, start thinking about it early. I will say that I have not found the high schools to be particularly helpful. And that's not the way it should be. You know, these programs, they're out there, but start talking to the students that are in, especially if they're in the adaptive sports, you can talk to them in the program because parents are a good one to share the information. Somebody I see said FAFSA every year. If your income changes, you must apply for FAFSA if you want to get a scholarship. So it's not an option. Even if you say, we won't qualify for help, you have to fill it out. Otherwise, you can't get this other help. So FAFSA is not an option, even if you don't qualify. The other thing is opening an ABLE account. Yes, people can contribute to that. It used to be the Special Needs Trust. That's not the thing to do now for students who have the ability to go to college. But the money's there. I mean, there just is no reason that you can't go to college and come out debt-free. You just have to be thoughtful and ready. to work on it a little bit. I talked to a student the other day who said, well, can you help me with voc rehab? She's got spina bifida. I said, sure, you qualify for it. Well, she was offered it. She just never filled out the forms. I said, what do you mean you never filled out the form? She says, yeah. She goes, I guess I'm a procrastinator. So for a year, they were bugging me and they closed my file. You know, think about it. You're going to get $150,000 for education. Sign the form.
And I think, right. And the important part with that too is that if you fail a class, voc rehab won't pay for it again. So it's really important that once you get it, that you continue to get good grades, because this isn't a guaranteed money. You have a responsibility to use that money well. And that is like, you have to pass your classes, which, I mean, you hopefully do in college, but know that voc rehab will come back and say, I'm not paying for that class, that particular class again, and that will be out of your own money if you fail it. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, you know, I tell the students, you're getting paid $783 a month to go to school. You know, all these people have to do a work-study program. You're getting $783. This is your job, and you're getting paid to go to school. So, and again, like this kid that's from Texas, got a $39 bill. You're getting paid an incredible amount of money to go to school. Study hard. Go out, take this as an advantage. Get that good degree from a great school.
Thank you.
May I add just a brief comment on the K through 12 tuition scholarships that we provide? We don't advertise. We don't spend money doing anything except giving grants. But the way people find out about us is during adaptive sports events. Parents are always asking me, how can we pay you back? And I tell them, well, when you go to these adaptive sports events and you're sitting around a picnic table and you hear somebody talk about having their child go to private school, tell them about our foundation. Well, I noticed this year, new applications were like drying up. And I figured, well, that's because there's no physically going on adaptive sports events. So we're having in my verbiage, we're having a slow year of new applicants because there's less intermingling of families to learn about what we do.
And Tom, what is the application process? Is it lengthy, and you know, is it something that's pretty achievable?
There's a contact us form on our website that takes about 30 seconds to fill out. It turns into an email to myself and one of our other directors. I then send a standard format email to the person that expressed interest, and I set up a phone conversation. And in that conversation, I ask a bunch of questions, I answer questions, and I generally ask for some additional written information, like what's the tuition at the school, what tuition aid did the school offer. Occasionally, if most families are already getting financial aid through organizations that do a financial screening, such as to get a CAF grant, they have to qualify as having financial need, which if CAF says they have financial need, that's good enough for me. Occasionally, we'll ask for an income tax return just to verify we're not giving money to rich people. And all of our grants are single-year grants, which we like to renew, if possible, every year until the student graduates. But I always tell the parents, get in touch with me next year, except if you win the Powerball lottery this year, don't call me next year. In other words, they have to continue to qualify to need financial aid. So it's a very simple process. We actually don't have a form to fill out other than this contact page on our website.
Fantastic. And Tom, I'll try to do another push the next time I speak with our event directors that run the events like Darlene does in Texas, just to push out to their networks too, because it's a dry season right now. But we'll try to spread the word for you a little bit over the next month or two.
Thank you.
I think the other problem is with K-12 schools is no one knows how they're going back right now. All the disabled kids their parents are afraid to send them back in the population right now too. So that might be another reason.
Yeah.
There are a lot of homeschooling kids going right now.
Yeah. And then Debbie, I just wanted to follow up on you. You used the acronym FAFSA. Can you tell us what, in case people don't know here, what that stands for? Once again, do you know what it is? Or is that just such a...
It's the federally, somebody's typing it, yeah. The federal, hold on, I'll tell you faster, because it's, it's the free application for federal student aid.
Perfect.
Free application for federal student aid, but if you type in FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, and again, it's, you can say, I'm still looking for some help. I make too much money to qualify. You know it. You still have to fill this out. It's a must to fill it out.
Fantastic.
So
And
it's, yeah, but again, the money's out there, and it's, there's not a whole lot of advantage of having a disability. This is a good advantage.
And school is expensive, so but better take advantage of it.
Well, and especially if you're getting, this helps pay for books. And I know one of my daughter's books was $600 in a science class. It was ridiculous.
Voc Rehab also helps with hand controls and some other stuff to get you to your job as well, and sometimes to
Right.
school. So there's more than just like, it's to get you into work. So anything that you need to get into work, they help you with as well.
Yeah, so as you get your degree, then you can say, well, now I need to get to work. Hand controls and, I mean, anything, including if they have to buy a uniform for you. I mean, they will do that. But again, you got to keep your grades up. So, and the grades, we're not talking a 4.0, although that would be a good thing to do. But, you know, 2.0 is okay. Not below that.
And the things you guys have been talking about can apply to a community college or a state school, correct? Kind of across the board?
It could actually apply to, if you said, I want to be a hairdresser, they will send you to, I had somebody who wanted to go to, and Paul Mitchell's hair salon dressing school, and they paid for it and they bought the scissors and did that. So they're there to help you become independent and employed.
That's great. It's fantastic.
Does anyone have any final questions? Because we're going to start wrapping up because we're going to get ready to move to the next session.
I don't think my question was answered. Do small colleges generally have more money to give than larger colleges?
I think it just depends on the college. If it's there are some, the prestige of the college a lot of times, or smaller colleges have money, cities where they are, how they're funded. There's a lot that goes into colleges, how much federal funding they get, what division are they? Are they Division 1 school, 2 school, 3 school? There's a lot that goes in it. So it's not an easy question to answer, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody else has a different one.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is, if you can hear me, my name is Sue Rossi. Is everybody still able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm switching computers, but I want to welcome you and thank you again for being here tonight.
I think we lost Susan. Do you want us to introduce ourselves? Would that just be easy to keep?
Maybe. Yeah, I think she might have got bumped off, but we can, if you guys want to introduce yourselves, we'll start with you, Darlene.
Okay, hi, I'm Darlene Hunter. So I am a Paralympic athlete. I actually started in track and went to University of Arizona, and that's where I started playing wheelchair basketball. And so I'm a Paralympic athlete in wheelchair basketball in 2012 and 2014. Or 2016, we won gold in 2016 in Rio. But I have my PhD from Texas Women's University. I went to University of Arizona and University of Texas Arlington. So I've been a little bit at both adapted sports programs. And then I'm back now at UTA teaching as a professor in social work. So I've been involved in sports since I was 7, so 20 plus years of my life now. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know if Deborah wants to go next.
Sure. Yeah, Deborah, do you want to go?
Sure. So I'm Debbie McFadden. I am the former Commissioner of Disabilities for the United States, one of the original 12 authors of the ADA. I am the proud mother of Paralympians Tatiana and Hannah McFadden, and help work on the film that I hope all of you will be watching tomorrow, Rising Phoenix, that will come out. So it's the history of the Paralympics. So please see it. I think you all enjoy it. I'm a founder of Competitive Edge Management. We do work around the United States with students with disabilities and their families wanting to go to college. I've received about $19 million to date. And I was actually paralyzed from the neck down in graduate school. I spent 4 years in an electric chair, another 8 on crutches learning to walk. So I've kind of seen the full circle of things.
Thank you. Tom, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Tom Glassberg. I'm here representing the Antonio V. Glassberg Educational Foundation, which was started by my son, Antonio, shortly before he died of cancer when he was 23. We provide tuition assistance scholarships for physically challenged students with financial need to attend K through 12 private schools throughout the United States.
Okay, I don't think that Sue is back yet. I think they're trying to get her back in the room. Maybe we can start. Like, Darlene, did you want to talk a little bit to start while Sue's heading back in?
Sure. So I will talk about being an athlete with a disability and going to college. People asked me if I was able to get a scholarship to go to college. And actually, I started way before there is a lot out there for adapted sports and people with disabilities to go to college. So in 2000, I went to University of Arizona and wasn't really aware of all the programs that were out there and didn't find them. So I ended up paying for my U of A education. And so that's why it's really important for me to continue to talk at presentations like these so kids figure out, and our adults figure out how to pay for college. But when I went to University of Texas Arlington, I played wheelchair basketball and got a scholarship there. And then for my other degrees, I ended up being a TA, like a teaching assistant, and that's how I ended up paying my way through college. So I didn't have to pay my own money, and got scholarships along the way from academic purposes. So that's a little bit of how I financed my way through college. So Deborah, I think, is going to talk about how she knows about finances for college for people with disabilities.
Sure. So there are 2 programs that are out there that help pay for, well, they can help you pay for college. One is Supplemental Social Security Income, SSI, and the other is Vocational Rehabilitation. Sometimes known as, I think where Darlene is a Texas Workforce, but it's all under the Department of Rehabilitation. And those 2 programs are diametrically opposed. Social Security is about everything that you can't do. You can't. And they have definitions. So I'll use my daughter Tatiana as an example. If you have spina bifida, they assume that you can't do anything. And so but when you qualify for that, and if you have a disability, you will qualify for it. It is tricky because how you answer the questions, you have to answer them right. You don't lie, you never ever lie in anything, but you answer the way that they need to be answered, the way they're asking it. But that gives you roughly just about $9,000 in cash a year. $9,000 in cash a year that you can use any way that you want, and you get that for as long as you're not working. I started helping, my company helps people from the age of 18 on, although we start working with families before that. And the reason 18 is because that's when you are defined as an adult and it doesn't go off the parent's income. The second program, vocational rehabilitation, says, oh my gosh, you have a disability. We have to rehabilitate you to become a tax-paying citizen. What can we do? And so that program will pay for your tuition, room and board, books to get you into college. Let me say that again, tuition, room and board, and books. I'm working with a student in Texas who's actually going to Arizona. We got his bill. He owes $39 a semester. He's going to a fabulous school for $39 for this semester. But the point of that program is to help you get a job. And so they want to know that, you can't say I want to study philosophy. It's got to be, I want to study this so I can get employed as X. And as Darlene reminded me in the last session, that, also to help get you hand controls if you need it. I don't like to get hand controls beforehand because they'll sometimes say, oh, we gave you hand controls. We don't have to pay anything else. We want to get your kids, or if you're a student, get you out of college debt free. Now remember, this $9,000 in cash a year, well, I'm assuming you're going to five years to get out of school, especially if you're playing sports. That's $45,000 in cash. It's a good chunk of money.
Okay. Tom, did you want to talk a little bit about your organization and the K-12 scholarships and grants?
I think I was supposed to explain how our foundation came about.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Very briefly, and this is explained in much greater detail on our website, which, by the way, is antonioglassbergfoundation.org. And if you can't find that by either directly typing that in or Googling, call Stacy or Clayton, and they'll tell you how to reach me. When my son Antonio was in elementary school, he was in a private school, and he had a good friend, little boy, through the 4th grade. And when my son came home from school the first day of the 5th grade, he was kind of down because he said that friend didn't show up, and he wasn't going to show up according to the teacher. And it became clear it was because that family couldn't afford the tuition, and the school offered a small scholarship that the family couldn't afford to make up the difference. So that was when my son was about 10. Then when he was a senior in high school, he was 16, and we found out he had cancer. And when he was, between the time he was 16 and the time he was 23, he had every treatment known to man. And it became apparent there was no more treatment available. So Antonio said to me, he would like to start a foundation that would help kids like this child that he remembered from grades kindergarten through 4th grade, who had to leave the school and didn't come back in 5th grade. And Antonio had some funds, which resulted from my making some investments when he was born 23 years earlier. And he founded our foundation, put that money into the foundation. And that was 19 and a half years ago. We've now had scholarship grants in, I think, 35 different states throughout the country. And in fulfillment of our mission, we've helped about well over 100 different students. Our scholarships are single-year scholarships, which are renewable at our discretion, as long as the family continues to qualify. As I tell the parents, contact me next year unless you win the Powerball lottery. Don't be calling me because you won't qualify. But we've had tremendous success. It's all word of mouth from parents whose kids have scholarship grants. Normally there's a lot of interface between families at adaptive sports events, and that's how we get the word out. Thank you, Tom. So Darlene, I have a question for you.
So what are some other adapted sports scholarship opportunities that are out there? I know you had previously mentioned a few in the last group. Do you have some ideas that you can share some of our participants?
So one of them is Swim with Mike, which is a big one for physically disabled individuals. There's like 180 Medical, and I think everybody always is like, oh, I got to go for the big one that's going to cover everything. And really, if you apply for a lot of little ones, they add up to big ones. So we actually had a student at UTA who applied for a scholarship for $1,000. It was a small one. No one else applied for that scholarship, and they were offering it to 2 people. So he ended up getting both scholarships and ended up having $2,000. So those $500, those $1,000, those $2,000 add up to make some differences. We had another girl just apply for just the local scholarship within her school district or her county. So those are some other ones, like you look close to home, because those are the people who've been supporting you all the way and believe in you and pretty much know your name. And so they'll help you out. But Swim with Mike's a big one that does disabled. We have a lot more for equipment than education because we have vocational rehabilitation that I think is filling a lot of the voids. But there is out there, look at whatever your disability is, Google that, plus a college scholarship, and a lot of information comes up. There's a lot for amputees, like Amputee Coalition of America gives out one. So there's a lot out there, but disability specific.
Thank you. Okay, Debbie, I have some questions
the
for you.
The Craig Nielsen Foundation actually has a fabulous scholarship. They pay for everything, but that is based on having a fabulous academic ability, but it's great. The other thing you have to fill out is FAFSA, which is a federally, the free application for federal student aid. Again, FAFSA, FASFA. And that you must fill out, even if you say we wouldn't qualify for any financial things, because those are student loans. Even if you don't qualify, you have to fill out that form in order to get scholarships. A lot of the colleges, that's part of, they require you to do it. Again, even if you don't qualify to get a Pell Grant from the federal government, but I can tell you this, with the students I'm working with, a lot of them have, I don't know, between $3,000 and $7,000 Pell Grant. And some don't get anything, but again, we use as Darlene said, you want to use everything that's available to you. Now, if you're going in state, pretty much we can get everything paid for, everything minus a little bit. But, you know, the SSI money you're getting is about $783 a month. It certainly helps pay for a lot, more than you need to go to college. But let me tell you this, it's very tricky to fill out these forms. If you do not fill them out right, you will be denied. And if you're an amputee, or you're spina bifida, or have CP, or blind, or you qualify for it. And if you hear somebody say, oh, I applied and didn't get it, it's because they filled out the forms wrong.
Okay, Tom, I have some follow-up questions for you. In your experience working with K through to 12 kids who have decided to go the private school route, what are the most common reasons kids with physical disabilities choose private over public schools?
One word: bullying. The public schools cannot control the bullying, and the private schools have the wherewithal to control the bullying. It's really as simple as that. There's a page on our website, Why Private School, that goes into a greater detail about private schools can be a more protective environment. And actually, Clayton helped us write that section of our website. So that addresses your question, but every parent I talk to and ask that question to, why do you want to transfer from public to private school? Or why did you want to when you transferred? It's always bullying. The public schools can't control it, I'm convinced, because Their most drastic thing to do to a kid that's a bully is to kick him out. So what's going to happen? The kid will go to another public school and he'll still be a bully. It doesn't work that way in private school. If a kid gets kicked out of private school, he's probably not going to get into it for being a bully. He's probably not going to get into another private school. And when one kid gets kicked out for being a bully, it sends a strong message to the other kids in the school and the families. You want to go to this elite school or any private school, don't be bullying some kid that has a physical challenge. It isn't gonna fly.
Hi, everyone. I am so sorry I'm back. Did you guys all just solve the world? I know Tom did. My apologies. Can I just ask really quick, what have you guys covered your great stories and where you came from?
We actually covered where we came from, the stories, how we get funding, funding options.
Okay. Well,
Yes,
if you don't mind if I jump in, I'm going to ask Darlene her experience as an athlete in the school system and scholarship opportunities that she knows out there.
We did that one.
You did it. You guys have, it's only 10 minutes in.
we were kind of efficient in how we did it. You led us through great last time, so.
Okay, and then Darlene, did you address how you would recommend up and coming student athletes evaluate different options?
No, we're right there. You're perfect. That's where we are.
Perfect.
So I always tell our students that when we have, because you guys go out and you look at all the colleges and you get to do your site visits, but you find one that if you were not able to play that sport, would you still enjoy being there is our best advice. Because we know as adapted sports athletes, things happen with your health or you get injured and you can't play sports, but is that there a degree that you want? Like, don't go to a college and try to fit a degree into the program of sports. Go there for the degree, because sports is a tool for everything else in life. Sports is great. It gets you to college if you're going to do adapted sports. It gives you confidence and self-esteem, but the education is what gives you a lifestyle. It allows you to pay your bills and get farther. SSI and SSDI are great tools, but for what you probably want to accomplish in life, you're going to need a little bit more money. So the education is really important. So for me, it was find a place that you felt at home, that if you weren't able to do sports, right now with COVID, a lot of people aren't doing sports. So are you still enjoying that college experience without them? Are the people good to you? Will they take care of you? That would be my personal advice. I've gone through 3 different colleges now, so I have had different experiences with each one, but they have lasted memories for me.
Thank you, Darlene. And hearing from each of you, Debbie, Tom, and Darlene, if you were to give just some really solid, I know you already have during this call, solid advice to people that are thinking about this process or where to start or just feeling overwhelmed with thinking about it, what would you suggest to people that are starting to work the system? Debbie?
Well, Darlene had a great point last call. Don't wait till the end. Don't procrastinate. And by the way, not everybody wants to go to college. These programs will also help you if you want to get training in a particular field. It will help you for that. But if you want to go to college, be thoughtful about it. Start thinking about what the options. Talk to some of the students. And if you're a parent out there, again, you need to fill out the FAFSA form. And we need to get you going so that we start thinking about what are the funding possibilities. There is no reason that you cannot go to school if you have a disability. The supports are out there. And the supports are out there whether you need the supports financially or you need accommodations in classes. They are there.
Thank you. How about you, Tom?
Well, to get started with our foundation, all a person needs to do is find our website and fill out a very, very brief form on our contact page. which gets converted to an email that I and one of our other directors receive. And then we'll start the ball rolling by a telephone conversation, typically with the parents. Occasionally, we made a grant 2 weeks ago, and it was strictly based on a conversation with the student who was entering her senior year. I wish she had contacted us several years earlier. She has one leg and she plays on a basketball team in Illinois. I Googled her and I found this is completely off topic, but anyway, I found a newscast about her and her team where every member of her basketball team, this girls' school, had a straight A 4.0 average, which leads me to say that our grants, the way we're set up, these are not scholarships that are based on merit. They're based on need. And parents that I talked to for the first time are totally, understandably, very anxious to tell me about their child's progress in the Paralympics, and I'm interested in hearing it, but it doesn't really affect our grant decisions. We have students that we issued a grant a month ago, and the mother told me that the student, if he drops his pencil, he can't pick it up. He has to have somebody else pick it up. So he can't participate in sports. But so these grants are based on need and not merit. And I would also say that we've provided grants to students who have obviously terminal illnesses, and we've had at least one or I think two students that actually died while they had grants from us. We're not making an investment in these students for whom we provide grants. We're just trying to make their life a little bit better. So we'll be glad to give grants to someone who has a very short life expectancy. We've issued quite a few of them.
And Tom, I like what you said on the last call. I don't know if you mentioned it already tonight with this group, but that it's people should reapply every year, and potentially they could be supported throughout their whole K through 12 experience.
Correct. Our grants are single year grants, and we like to have a brief conversation to consider a renewal grant each year, which we normally grant as long as the family and the students still qualify. Almost every one of our grantee students has a permanent physical challenge, so that's not going to change from year to year. Sometimes the financial situation changes and there's simply no financial need, or the family switches schools. And so we like to update things every year, and we make it clear that it's within our discretion of our board to decide whether to issue a renewal grant, which is our desire to stick with a student and the family through 12th grade.
It's phenomenal. And looking over at the comments, Clayton and Ezra are mentioning, you're the most amazing blessing for their community, for this community in general. And yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And Tom was saying earlier that he's usually out and about educating the public at different events throughout the country, and doesn't spend a lot on marketing and things like that. So since there's not as many in-person events this year, we all need to make sure we're spreading the word about this in case somebody's looking for such an opportunity. It's pretty amazing.
Most of our referrals come from one parent to another who got to talking at an adaptive sports event. And every year, except won't be this year, I'll get a flood of inquiries right around the same time as the Angel City Games were. And I'll always ask a new person, well, how'd you hear about Antonio's Foundation? Well, I was at the Angel City Games and so-and-so told me about it. And then I'll get another flood of applications in October when people have been at the CAF events, which I don't think are taking place physically again this year in San Diego. So it's all word of mouth.
Thank you, Tom. And to Debbie and Darlene, you might have addressed this again, I'm sorry. What age do people start to need to be thinking about these things, or what timeline exists? I know it's not generic across the board, every school, but just in general.
Well, you know, I think definitely in high school, I want to start talking to parents. I think most of my parents have kids that are 16, 17. Certainly, we want to be ready to roll at 17 and a half. Because I like to get them when they turn 18, because they're an adult and it doesn't go on their parents' income.
Makes sense.
But in high school, we could start gearing them up for voc rehab. So
yeah. Well, and it's always the earlier the better, in the sense of like your ACTs, your SATs, like take your pre-SATs, take your pre-ACTs. Like people I know are nervous about test taking, and so they push it off and say they're not going to do it. And a lot of things with college and getting in is, Debbie was talking about FAFSA, like there's deadlines for all of this stuff. So the earlier that you get in, especially your senior year, the better off it is. So like apply to colleges before October, because a lot of colleges make their first financial like scholarships in November, December, and then another one in February. So if you weren't in that first pot, the money is a little bit lighter second part of the year. So we have a lot of students that waited too long and they're still trying to get their voc rehab figured out, and school starts tomorrow, but they started too late in the process. Like they were doing it in June and July, and then, it's a federal funded program, so it takes some time to do it. So this is something like there's money out there, but you have to do some work to get it. This is not just handed to you on a golden platter. It's important that you get good grades. That's step one, and that starts early in your academic career, right? Like your freshman year is when colleges start looking at your GPA to get you into college. So the better grades you get, the more opportunities you have. So you're not just relying on Pell Grants and FAFSA and voc rehab and that stuff. You can get academic scholarships from your high school maybe, or the college. So the earlier the better with that. My best advice is do well, get good grades so that you could go anywhere you want, and school is not being dictated by what your GPA is if it's low, and that you don't have to force yourself into not your dream school because you just thought school classes weren't important in high school. We know a lot of people are like, oh, it's my freshman year, my sophomore year, but it really leads into how your junior and senior year finishes with your GPA. So get good grades. That's my biggest advice to you. Get good grades.
it's great advice.
Thank you, Darlene. I don't see too many that I don't see any we didn't answer in the chat. Is there any questions you guys have for Deb, Tom, or Darlene? Something to stump them, maybe? And Debbie, you shared all the federal options out there.
Well, it's not all the federal options, but those are two really good options that I can say that 100% of the people that I've worked with get the money. So they're good programs. In fact, they're so good. I wish my youngest daughter, who does not have a disability, I'm like, she doesn't qualify for any of these great supports. So
Clayton's presenting a stumper here. What was your biggest regret or mistake in your personal educational journey that this group can learn from? We'll put it out to all of you. Darlene looks like she wants to go first.
It's really interesting for my life because I didn't plan my education very well, I guess. You could say like I stumbled into it and was really lucky.
I didn't plan it well, and you've got your doctorate, but go ahead, we're listening.
I got my doctorate because I needed emergency back surgery and I needed to stay on my parents' health insurance. And I got my PhD by the time I was 26. And so I needed emergency back surgery, and that's why I continued on with my education. It wasn't a logical plan. It worked out for me, which I'm thankful for, but that is really the reason why my education happened the way it was. I just wish that, I think we focus too much on four-year schools all the time, and there's, voc rehab will pay for what Debbie was saying, like you could be a cosmopolitan or cosmopolitist, or you can be like welding. There's so much that people with disabilities can do, and we're limited by our own minds. And I think sometimes that is what gets in the way. If you dream it and you want to do it, there's always a way. There's the Seated Nurse, if you're following her on social media right now, she's a nurse that's in a wheelchair, and she's a pretty powerful person. and her stance of being able to do things that people with disabilities think you can't do. And so it's always, that's like my biggest thing is like, I probably could have dreamed bigger, but I limited myself on what I thought was the appropriate job for somebody with a disability in 2000.
Wow, I wish I could dream so low as you, Dr. Darlene.
But it worked out, and now I teach disability and social work in college so that all the social workers that go out in the world from Texas now know that they better treat disability in a different fashion and through a different lens. And so that's like my proudest moment for my education is I didn't really expect to be a social worker, but in the end, I get to change people's lives every day through this experience.
Thank you, Darlene. Anything to add, Debbie or Tom?
I see somebody has a question there. Does work as liaison between students and Voc Rehab? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Carter, do you mind going off mute for a moment so you can ask your question?
Yeah, we were just wondering, does she actually like provide you with information on how to address Voc Rehab, or so that you get the services that you need? Or I know it's probably
yeah, I give a seminar. Somebody, Clayton, am I scheduled at another time to give us another seminar?
Potentially, yeah. There's just no date.
Okay, but yeah, Carter, how old is it you or somebody else?
I'm 16. I just recently turned 16.
Okay, so you have a little bit. I would try to make sure that you go to the seminar where I can go in more detail there, but it's very important to start working on this and be exact. Can I ask that your disability?
CP.
CP. So see, from my workshops, I go, that's great. So are you, how do you ambulate?
I don't, can you share that in another?
Do you walk?
Mm-hmm.
How are your hands?
They're pretty good.
So what I would say is, so when somebody has CP, I say, oh, now do you play sports?
Yeah, I play.
What do you do?
I play wheelchair basketball.
Right. So, so, you know, I would ask you, do you use a wheelchair daily? And I'm guessing you might say, no, I can walk around, but I would say, can you walk if you wanted to go around Disney World, or would you need an assistive device? And so,
Oh, I need an assisted device. I would need a wheelchair.
Okay, so that's how we would work it for SSI. You know, we would make sure that we document that you know, if it's like my daughter Hannah. If you ask Hannah, who's an amputee, do you walk? Her answer is yes, but the answer actually is no, because the second question they would ask is, how do you get around? Oh, a prosthetic leg. So we have to make sure you answer that the right way, so that you can get Social Security. When do you turn 18? Will you be in high school still?
He does have Social Security that will continue once he turns 18. So we have the part. But, you know, because he's kind of at that place where, you know, he can do some things and he wants to do these, everything's really been hard with getting services for him, because there's that fine line with, you know, what can he do versus what he can't do.
Yeah, but see, the difference is this, is that it's, you know, as a mom, we're proud of our kids. And so we want to say, oh, they can do everything. They can do everything. But everything is defined by the norm in society. So we say, so we can't answer it. You know, for example, we'll take my daughter Tatiana. She's got muscles to die for. We all wish we had her muscles, but based on spina bifida, she can't do some things. I mean, and she's not on the program now, but when she was. So what you want is your child to go through whatever program for them to get employment, be it college, or as Darlene said, a certificate training program. but it's how you answer those questions. So, and it depends on what hat you have on. If it's Social Security, and if your child's already on Social Security, that's great. Then that's a golden ticket. Then to apply for voc rehab, we want to say, what do they want to do? And you have options. Vocational rehabilitation can give you career assessments. I personally don't like going through them for that, because they may put you in a box of what you want to do. But I know some of the local colleges and community colleges, you can go there and they offer vocational assessments. But it's, do you know what your child wants to do?
What do you want to do?
I want to play wheelchair basketball.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we all do. But how do you want to? Yeah, and that's great. How do you want to earn a living when you're not doing wheelchair basketball? What kind of job?
Because let me tell you from experience, as a Paralympian, wheelchair basketball doesn't pay your bills, unfortunately.
So that's what you have to find out what you want to.
So we have to move. I know that's what I know. In college, he wants to play wheelchair basketball, and that's right now. That's all his life is that he has planned for his adult life. So we're working on other things besides wheelchair basketball.
And that, when you said he just turned 16, that is what I would expect him to say. I want to play basketball. I want to be basketball, and that's great. And I'm glad that you're working really hard on it. As you go through school, we've got to figure out, what do you want to do? And, Darlene said, yeah, she wasn't sure what she wanted. But we all, do you like sciences? Do you like the arts? Do you think, well, maybe I want to be a coach. I might want to be a kinesiologist. I may want to be study biology, study computers. I want to work on video game designs. So those are the things you need to explore, because when you say I want to play basketball, those are at the colleges, and the colleges you have to figure out, what do you want to major into, what you want to have as a career.
Okay.
So I from this conversation, I have two different pieces of advice. One, get all the have your ARG meetings or whatever IEPs meetings, and have as many accommodations that you are going to need, and get them in high school. Because when you leave high school and you don't have them, if you need services to help you through, it's harder to get them in college, and it costs a lot of money to have that testing done. So you have whatever testing you need to do for like dyslexia, learning disabilities, anything, have it documented before you go to college, and do it in high school. Like, that's my biggest advice, because it is easy to get that transition to college, so you have those accommodations, than it is to not get them in high school and then get to college, struggle, and try to get them. Like, it's really hard to do it that way. So your IEPs, make sure everything is documented, and never be too proud to ask for accommodations, even if you don't use them, because it will help you in college. So like, ask for like, what? Was that Debbie? Or Deborah?
Mm-hmm. That was me. I clicked on the link, then I went, who has a link?
But like, if you need extra time on tests or extra time to walk to classes, all of that, get that very much documented in your K-12, because when you go to college, that stuff will transfer over, but trying to get accommodations later is really hard to do from a college perspective of getting students in. So that would be like my advice. If students aren't doing that, that's the other part of not just thinking about funding and good grades, but those accommodations. And like Deborah was saying, of how, we think we can do our, be proud in all the stuff we can do. Don't be so proud that you hurt yourself because you're saying, you're so stubborn. Because I'm that person who's stubborn, like, I don't need help, but every once in a while it's like, oh, but I need to make sure there's a ramp to get into that building, or I have to ask for a classroom to be changed if something's not accommodated for me. Like, and those are all things that we need to ask for, so that we can have equity. Everybody asks, oh, I want equality. For disability, we want equity, because if equality, doesn't necessarily give us what we need, but equity does. So those are my advices from this.
Thank you.
You're kind of touching on it, and I'll be brief here, an issue that we've run into, and that is when a child is going to a public school and has a very extensive IEP, and their family is contemplating them switching to a private school, most private schools cannot provide what they were getting through the IEP. And we've actually had examples or situations where the family kept the student in the public school because of the IEP, which couldn't be duplicated in a private school, which is a disappointment to me that we failed to make it possible for that student to go to private school. In that case, the student needed someone to push their wheelchair all day long, and it was calculated by somebody that that would cost $35,000 for the year, which the school couldn't fund. And that's just way beyond our capacity for one student for 1 year. That was a huge disappointment to me.
Eric Mockover, and I guess I'm the host of this. I thought I was a moderator, but I'll call myself whatever you want me to call myself. It's great to be here for Educational Resource Night, and education is something that's I've basically spent my entire career doing. After college, I was admissions officer at two small liberal arts colleges, including Pitzer College out in Southern California, where I live now, and got my MBA at UCLA. And lo and behold, after a small journey to Disney, I became the director of admissions at the UCLA MBA program, where Alex is right now. And that was one of the most fun jobs I ever had, something I loved, and I've stayed within the educational arena, since then, mostly at UCLA Anderson. For the last 8 years, this is my 8th year, I've been an independent consultant after actually retiring from UCLA after 32 years of glory there. I was director of admissions, I was dean of students, I was head of the career center. I couldn't keep a job. I was dean of the MBA program, and my last job, I was the associate dean for alumni and development, because I knew everybody. And so that was my fun ride for 32 years. And admissions was always really close to my heart. And that's why I think I entered the educational consulting arena, working mostly with high school students who are looking for the best fit education for them in the college realm. And that's been a lot of fun for, again, my 8th year doing that. And I want to just start having us, the group, introduce themselves. It's really an all-star group, and I'm going to start by asking everybody to talk about their education and their careers, and you got a full minute to do that about. So, Alex, do you mind starting?
Not at all. I'll try to set the bar, and I'll try to keep within a minute, so don't hesitate to cut me off. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Lawrence, as mentioned. I'm going to say, because I'm very proud of it, I'm originally from New Jersey, and so I have a zigzag pattern of how I got out here to California. I did get my degrees in electrical engineering, bachelor's and master's, going to Drexel and Georgia Tech. Lived in Minnesota for a year, and then eventually came out here to California. Been out here now for 25 years, so you guys can probably do the math and carbon date me. But one of the things, like Eric, I'm also an alumnus of UCLA Anderson. And I know we'll get into many of these things a little bit later, but all along the journey in my education, I was very, I like to explore. I like to figure out things that I didn't like to do, and eventually trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So during the course of my engineering days, I worked in manufacturing facilities, power plants, research and development areas. And then when I did get my MBA to do a career switch, I did management consulting before pivoting into higher ed. So I've been working now here at UCLA for over 15 years, and admissions close to 10 years now. And I know, again, we're going to circle back on a lot of these sort of things to consider, but my main point is this is now a great time to explore and If you fail, it's a great time to do it and figure out what you don't like, and then eventually that'll lead to a path, leads you down a path of figuring out what you will like or would like to do.
Thank you, Alex. And Michael, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Mike Cottingham. I am an associate professor at the University of Houston. I actually got my undergraduate degree at the University of Arizona, where I was roommates with Dr. Blauett, who you'll hear from shortly. I competed in wheelchair tennis and basketball there, but I always knew that I sort of wanted to be more on the coaching and eventually administrative sides. So I transitioned into coaching there for a few years after my degree with the wheelchair tennis and rugby programs. I knew I was ready for a change. I wanted to get maybe more on the academic side. So I went to Southern Miss and got my master's and PhD. And now I'm an associate professor after bouncing around a little bit in New Hampshire. I'm at the University of Houston, and my research focuses on how society sees disability and disability sport, and how we can address and impact those views of disability and disability sport.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And Sherry?
Hi. Yeah, hi. Thanks, Eric. Pleasure to be on this panel with Alex and Mike. Thanks, guys. So briefly, my journey. I was initially a Midwest kid, born and raised on a farm in Iowa, got into adaptive sport and really latched onto the sport of wheelchair racing when I was in junior high. Continued to progress in the sport, and by the time I graduated high school, knew that I wanted to continue training and try to rise to the level of competing at the Paralympics. So moved from Iowa down to the University of Arizona, where I was roommates with Dr. Cottingham, as we both were involved in the adaptive sports program there and really living that student athlete lifestyle. When I got to undergrad, I had always had a goal in mind of attending medical school. So to continue down that path, I continued to compete through undergrad as well. And by the time I was ready to apply to medical school, wanted to stay somewhere, fair weather so that I could continue to train. So stayed on the West Coast and attended med school at Stanford, where I was the first wheelchair user to ever matriculate and attend school there. I was there for 4 years, and then when graduated med school, came to the East Coast for residency at Harvard, and have been here since. Joined faculty in 2014. I now practice sports medicine and also continue to do research in Paralympic sport, and particularly injury prevention for athletes with disabilities, and have stayed involved in leadership with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, as well as the International Paralympic Committee.
Thank you so much, Sherry. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the undergraduate decision-making process when it comes to college. When I speak to students, we start by talking, what do you really like in school? What are your favorite subjects? And that might lead you in a certain direction, but college is a time for most people for exploration. And it's easy and you can change your mind, but it's good to start with at least thinking about something you might be interested in. Then you might think about all these different colleges. There's thousands of them out there, and some of them are 40,000 students, and some of them have 2,000 or 1,500 students, and they're all very, very different and have their own culture really to them. And so we start talking about what type of culture, what type of school do you want? Do you want a big school that has rah-rah, that has fraternities and sororities, that you'll be in pretty large classes, at least in the beginning? Or do you really want to go to a small liberal arts college where you'll probably even get to know your faculty members really, really well, and you'll maybe even go over their home for dinner sometime? So what's interesting to you? Where do you want to be? If you're from Southern California, do you want to be in California you be closer to family, or do you want to explore another part of the country? We talk about those things, and always realizing that college is a time for exploration. So, and we eventually get to what we call a great fit for them. And that's really what we're looking for. I discourage people from looking too heavily at rankings, for example. Rankings can not be a good fit for you. And rankings are sometimes good to sell magazines for a magazine that are doing a ranking or something like that. The important thing is something that fits you. It's not uncommon for students I work with to have small colleges on their list, medium-sized colleges on their list, and large colleges on their list, big universities. and they can make their minds up later in the process. So I'd like to ask our panelists now, can you remember some type of framework that or thinking process that you used when you were going to undergraduate school, and what'd you do? So maybe Sherry, do you mind starting? We'll go back the other way.
No problem. Sure. Yeah, when I was thinking about college, the framework that I thought about and the values that I took into that decision, or that, I wanted to prepare myself for my career, of course. And by that time, I knew I was pretty interested in medicine. I liked biology and the sciences, but also really liked people. So I knew I didn't want to be in a lab all day, but rather I wanted to have a career where I could be, really out on the front lines. So that was really important to me. I knew that I wanted to continue to train and compete, and that was a really important part of my values and what I brought forward to that decision. I don't think there were many other things that would have taken me from the Midwest down to Tucson, Arizona, but that opportunity was really, really important in my decision making. And then the last was that, I was pretty practical then and still today in terms of the financial aspect of it, and wanted to make a decision that would, make sense for me and my family financially. And so all of those things kind of aligned and led to my decision to go to the University of Arizona. I came in with a pretty predetermined plan as it related to, pre-med coursework and eventually applying to medical school, but definitely had a good time dabbling along the way and, trying different classes and just exploring new things as well. So, I think everyone has personal values that they bring into the decision. And I always encourage people to think about, what is it that it really matters to you? And, whether it's small school, big school, reasonable tuition or more flexibility to go somewhere a bit more pricey, all those things are very personal, and there's no right or wrong.
Great, thank you very much. Mike, can you?
So I was a basketball player, but tennis was really my first love. There weren't that many programs that were available at the time for tennis. There was basically Southern Illinois, Ohio State had a young program, and the University of Arizona had a new program. I also knew that I wanted to get involved in the coaching side, so I selected a program that was more in development with hopes that I could sort of engage in more direction there. But also, I wanted to be at a large state school. I wanted to have sort of a traditional college experience. I really wanted to be at a big school and have everything that allowed, and not just not strictly just engage in only competing and my academic studies, but that holistic college experience. So being at a big state institution was really attractive as well. So it seemed like the most logical choice. I actually was strongly considering Ohio State, and then I was from Mississippi, and it never snowed, so I really didn't know what I was dealing with. And then it snowed one day and iced over, and I went down the end of the driveway to get the mail out of the mailbox, and I couldn't push back up the driveway because it was iced over. So I crawled up the driveway and dragged my chair, and I said, I'm going to go to the hottest place on the planet because Tucson sounds wonderful. I think students choose a lot of different reasons for colleges. But I think that Sherry was really proactive in thinking about her long-term career goals. And I think students now have to be, whereas I think we were really afforded an opportunity to figure it out by like sophomore, junior year. I think you have to start thinking about those things a lot sooner, because everyone's competing on the resume at a lot younger age. I'm teaching classes every day, and I see juniors coming in with really impressive resumes. So I would encourage students to think about the impacts of what institutions are going to provide them in terms of their career development, because that's really has to be a primary focus. So.
Thanks very much, Mike. Alex, you went to Drexel. How did that decision come about?
Yeah, sure. So I would say I went to a relatively small to medium-sized high school, and most of those who went to college stayed in New Jersey, and I didn't want to do that. So I say, okay, you know what, I'm going to apply to a school, as far away, so to speak, in my mind as possible, and then something relatively close. I did get into a couple schools in Chicago, Illinois, and then in Drexel as well, obviously. And what looking back on it, one of the things that I wish I had done would be to visit the campuses outside of Drexel. I never did go to the others there in Illinois, but I think going through the process, talking to more people would have probably been helpful for me. And like say, people would look at me now and they'd be shocked at me saying this, but back then, I was a nerd. I loved engineering and science. I was really introverted. And so Drexel engineering, you put all those things together, right? Engineers, they're kind of like a little bit of a quirky group. It was a great decision though, because at least part of my homework that I did do, they did have a co-op program. And like I'd go back to what I was saying earlier, that I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to be in engineering, and that, it was so vast. The co-op program gave me a great opportunity to work for a year and a half through 3 different internships. And, like I said earlier, working in a power plant is very different than a research and development lab, and as well as another AT&T, and it's a tech lab. And I figured out quickly I didn't want to do any of those things. So, kind of going back to the advice that Michael and Sherry did mention, the game is definitely different than when we were in school, for sure, that there is still time for exploration in that, whatever, say in the traditional sense, 4 years, 5 years. But I, again, go back to what I was saying earlier about, exploring. Now is a great time to sort of figure out what even if you fail, figuring out something to kind of get out a little bit out of your comfort zone. Don't go too crazy. I know, like I said, I went as far as going from Trenton to Philadelphia, which is all of 45 to 50 miles. And I didn't really spread my wings as much until I went to business school and lived abroad during its international overseas program. But one of the things, again, I look back to, which helped me out in my other graduate programs, was talking to more people, visiting the campuses, thinking a little bit like, okay, can I see myself here? Like was mentioned earlier, living on the East Coast, going through the snow. When I was starting to look at graduate schools, I'm like, I want to get away from the snow. Dealt with that for 20 plus years. So Atlanta, in my year and a half that I was at Georgia Tech, it had 2 snow days, and then out here in Southern California, you're surprised when it rains, right? Which it did a few days ago. So. But I would just add on to what they said earlier, talk to as many people as possible, visit the campuses, and kind of figure out what things you may or may not like along the way.
Terrific. Thank you, Alex. And one thing I've noticed also is most colleges now have these terrific virtual visits that you can find on their admissions part of their website. So students or prospective students should look into those, their virtual college visits. They're really excellent. And not quite the same as being there, but you got to do it. And they also have information sessions that you can sign up for. So I highly recommend that students do that as well. Okay, so thanks everybody. We want to mosey into Alex now specifically. Back to you, so stay tuned here, is we want to talk about graduate school now. Okay, so you're the Dean of Admissions at an MBA program, and there's lots of graduate programs at UCLA and all over the country, and extraordinary, and they're not the same. To be admitted to an MBA program is probably a little different from going to a law school, and certainly different from a med school situation. There's also people who might want to try psychology, or they might want to get a graduate degree in English. And what do you think the differences are applying to those places, and how do you prepare to take the plunge?
Yeah, sure. So I think, I'll start with taking the plunge first, is that of all those that you mentioned and many more, like you said, Eric, they have different requirements on how to apply. But I think before that, it's sort of like, what are the motivations for pursuing a law degree, a med school degree, an MBA? Because more than likely, after you get, say, a graduate degree, most people don't go back for another sort of shot at the well, so to speak, and get another degree on top of that. And just think about getting prepared to take the plunge while you're in undergrad. Whatever university, college that you may be a part of, or looking at other opportunities. Like Eric, you mentioned, there's plenty of ways to learn more about those graduate programs, from the information sessions to student ambassador programs, and maybe in some cases you can actually sit in on the class. I can tell you, being at the business school, whether it be undergraduates who sit in the classes or other students from other graduate programs, going through a graduate business program, sort of the structure and the teachings are way different than saying being in a lecture hall for, say, law school, or like you mentioned, psychology. The sort of the format could be different. The people definitely be different. I can speak, you know, with from two, after getting an engineering graduate degree and a graduate business school degree, again, different experiences totally. The whole part about applying, again, is another one where I think once you figure out your motivations for why you want to get a graduate degree in whatever discipline, once you start really getting serious about it, then it's really time to investigate what are the requirements. How can you make yourself competitive for the process? The landscape has changed so much over the past year. Some schools are waiving standardized tests. You know, probably many of you are familiar with, say, SAT, ACT. Now in graduate school, more than likely, you're going to be looking at the GRE, the GMAT as some standardized tests. Some schools are starting to waive those. Some are just saying they're making them optional. But typically, depending on the program, they may require some work experience, like business school. Others may just say you can apply while you're an undergrad and go right to graduate school afterwards, say law school. But the big thing that I would leave people an impression with, you know, in terms of getting prepared for that opportunity, is talk to people who are already in there or maybe have the degrees already. So current students in that graduate program, people who graduated with degree, and probably the people who have those degrees are just as important as the current ones, because see how happy they are. You know, see how happy they are in their position. Did they enjoy the experience? Because as I mentioned earlier, it's not likely, or it's very few people who go on and get, say, a second, third, fourth graduate degree, but see what they're doing with it. And again, you have such a, say, long roadway to figure all that out before you actually, like, again, you said, Eric, take the plunge. Because I think, you know, I'm sure I see Clayton's on here too. None of us would love to or like to take the GMAT again, or any type of standardized test, but writing applications, getting people to write letters of recommendation, that's all part of the process. You get a little bit of taste of that when you apply to college, but when you start looking at graduate programs, sort of the stakes are a little bit higher. And more than likely, and maybe my stats are off, Eric, you can probably speak more to this, but like when in undergrad, you're probably applying to 10 to 15 undergraduate programs. In graduate school, you're probably applying to maybe 3 to 5 at best. So the stakes are, again, a little bit higher for graduate program versus undergrad, because you're a lot more focused on what your intended purpose is and experience that you want to have.
Thank you very much, Alex. That's terrific. Mike, you decided to get a doctorate. That's no trivial deal. It takes a lot of years. It takes a little blood, sweat, and tears probably along the way. You got to be highly focused to do that. There's lots of different PhD programs out there, but how long does a PhD program or a doctoral program take for most people anyway? And what type of people get PhDs, and what do you do afterward?
Great question. PhD program, if you're in more of a traditional hard science, if you're like in that biology, anatomy, physiology, chemistry model, you don't necessarily have to have a master's. That PhD can take 6 to 7 years. It really depends on your dissertation and your topic. If you're more on the psychology, sociology, sport management, if you're in sort of that realm of research, you're looking at typically required to have a master's degree, which is 1 to 2 years, depending on your program. And then you're looking at a 4-year to 5-year PhD program. So it works out to be about the same amount of time. I will say that it's not like being an undergraduate. So you're not just going and taking classes and taking exams. You're really sort of training to be a member of the academy. So you're conducting research. You're often teaching classes. You're being exposed to what it would be like to be a faculty member. And in most situations, if you're in a quality PhD program, you're not paying for it. Generally, and that's why those positions are so competitive and sought after, because you typically will receive an assistantship, which is a free education and a small stipend, which is not enough to live on, but enough to defray some of your costs over that period of time. In exchange, you work for the university for 20 to really 40 hours a week. I will tell you that there's not a better quality of life than to be a faculty member. The job flexibility is outstanding. I choose what I want to study. I choose what I want to teach. I choose how I want to teach it. I choose the format I want to teach it in. And, it's the best job in the world for people that don't want to have a boss, but they still want a steady paycheck. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, right? It's guaranteed employment without sort of having someone over your shoulder, right? I can't imagine how difficult it must be to be an administrator in academia, because it's got to be like herding cats, because you're responsible for 40 people who don't want to have a boss and don't really have a boss. So, but it's really an outstanding job. You get to be around young people. You get to develop cool programs. You get to study and research exactly what you want. I teach 2 classes a semester. Then the rest of my time is committed to conducting research. But it's a really great pathway. If you like academia, if you have a curious mind, if you enjoy reading and you like solving problems, it's the absolute best direction you can go. So there's a reason so many folks with disabilities who've been strong athletes have matriculated into PhDs, and Dr. Hunter, who's in the other call, is one of those people, is that the quality of life lends itself really well to disability. Like if you have to get off your butt for a while because you have pressure sores, you can do that. You can still do your job. You have a lot of flexibility if you have a disability in academia, and you can do outstanding work, and you get to be around young people who are highly motivated. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking about what they want to do, like, consider academia. It's an outstanding career path.
Thanks very, very much. Sherry, you sounded like earlier that you decided to go into medicine pretty early on. So tell us a little bit about that thought process, and how you followed that up, how you got to the promised land as you did that. And
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. So, as the other panelists described, it was definitely a journey, and not a short one, but very fulfilling in the end. I really had already started to envision a career in medicine when I was in high school. Much of that was because of my mom. My mom worked in healthcare, and I really, looked up to her, obviously. I found going to visit her at work, I found it to be a really exciting environment, and just always felt like it could be a good fit. So when I got to the U of A, I chose a major that was fairly well aligned with the pre-med curriculum. If you're interested in going in medical school, there certainly are several prerequisites that you have to take. And, you can major in English literature and get a degree in English literature and still go to medical school. But in addition to all your English literature classes, you also have to take chemistry, biology, and physics and math. So you might as well just major in something, in my opinion, might as well just major in something where you have to take those anyway, and make the path a little bit more efficient. You also learn pretty quickly when you're on that trajectory towards med school, what you need to do in order to really build up what will eventually be your application. Things like getting involved in research and community service, getting hands-on experience in a healthcare environment. All those things really help to make you a stronger applicant. And then there are the required steps for, taking things like the MCAT, for example, which really just involves, shutting yourself into a closed room for several months and just creating a schedule for yourself, studying day to day, and making sure that you cover all the material so that you're prepared on the day that you have to take the exam. And so, it's a fairly well delineated path. It definitely takes persistence and a lot of planning, but frankly, for people like me, like that's like what my personality was suited towards anyway. I'm pretty type A in that regard. So if you have that type of side to you, then it's pretty doable. Interestingly, medicine is a career that really only over the last several, I would say like last 10 years or so, has started to become more open to people with disabilities. Like prior to that, there were a few doctors here and there with disabilities if you looked across the country and looked at the medical landscape, but there are very few and far between. When I applied, I was certainly the only applicant that I knew that had a visible disability. Of course, others may have had less visible disabilities. Frankly, looking back on it, I think that by that time I was already a Paralympic athlete. So I think that being a Paralympic athlete very much helped me, because I think it helped the schools see me as, frankly, and this has good and bad sides to it, but I think they saw me as a safe bet, as like a person with a disability that they could accept and matriculate, that was fairly physically capable, and, you know, pretty determined and able to set goals and meet those goals. You know, at the time, I don't think I realized that connection between sport and success in sport and how much that helped me in my med school applications. But looking back now, I see that that was probably a key part of it. Now there are, the whole field has really opened up a lot more. You know, there are major organizations like the AAMC, which is the American Association of Medical Colleges, which is being very proactive about promoting disability as an important aspect of diversity in medicine, both in terms of medical school student bodies, but also the profession. You know, ultimately what we want our body of healthcare professionals to look like. And there's increasing research that, you know, if our profession is diverse, we provide better care to diverse populations. And everyone in a healthcare environment has a disability of some type, whether it's permanent or transient. And so it only makes sense and makes us all better to have disability as an important element of diversity in the field. After getting into med school, I kept a pretty open mind with regards to how I wanted to shape things after that. And always thought I would be interested in rehabilitation just because of the alignment of my personal life experience, but also didn't want to be pigeonholed into it because it seemed a little bit classic, like the person with a disability would go into a rehab as a field. But as I progressed through, I continued to see that there was nothing that I felt more passionate about and that it was just frankly the best fit. So, so then moved on to after 4 years of medical school, moved on to a residency in physical medicine and rehabilitation. And within that, a subspecialty niche in sports medicine and particularly Paralympics and Paralympic sport medicine. So similar to how Mike described, I think I started with sort of that standard path, but then the further you get along, and particularly if you enter into academic medicine, and become a faculty member, you know, you also have that flexibility to carve out, you know, what you want your research to look like and how you want to make a niche for yourself around what you feel most passionate about.
I think the last thing you said really rings true. You need to be passionate about when you're doing medicine or PhD or any graduate program. You got to want it. And
yeah, definitely.
Go for it. So,
Sorry, Eric, just a time check. We've got actually 5 minutes before we have to be moved to the other room. So we've got 2 questions in the chat. First one's from Camille. What are your thoughts around attending community college first, especially with the current health and economic situation? So 5 minutes before we have to be moved.
I mean, I can start that one. I think it's a good call. At this situation, it ain't business as usual at most colleges, that's for sure. And community college, at least the ones I know in California, are generally excellent. They're not all that expensive, and if you're going to be online anyway, why not? It sounds like a good choice and an intelligent choice. You don't have to do that, but it's a pretty good choice and probably smarter than it might have been 3 years ago. Anyone?
Yeah, I'll just add, I agree with you, Eric. You know, again, the old model of possibly, you know, going to a university 4 years, et cetera, and getting a guaranteed job afterwards, that may not ring so true. So community college, a lot of great programs out there. And, you know, again, I can only talk from, say, the UCLA lens. I'm always impressed by students who transfer from community colleges. You know, they are super fired up coming into the school, into the brewing community, and they sort of set the world on fire a little bit. So I think, you know, community college or any others sort of online options are definitely fair game right now.
Okay.
Right. So we've got another
question. Yeah.
Yes, there's just a number here, so I don't know who it's from, but I think from a reference to one of the panelists, everyone compete on their resume, so it is absolutely right. How did you win the resumes competition?
I can start that one because it's like a requirement for med school is to win the resume competition. The way I tackled it, at every stage, both undergrad to med school and then med school to residency and then residency to fellowship, was looking ahead to see what was valued and like sort of going back in time. So, you know, I thought about, you know, what do I want my resume to look like in 4 years from now? And then planned things to fill it in along the way, rather than sort of taking it as it comes and like hoping that would happen on its own. So I hope that makes sense. But, you know, like, for example, when I wanted to apply for sports medicine fellowship, some of the requirements are that you like have worked with high school teams and college teams and provided field side care. And so, you know, looking at a couple years ahead and knowing that I needed to have that box filled, like started then at that time to seek those opportunities so that I could, you know, have everything lined up by the time it was needed. So I think that's a good strategy in general.
Any other question? Oh, here we go. One more question from Francisco. I'm a Mexican citizen. I did my bachelor's degree here, and I'm also an adaptive athlete. Is it a way I can do my master's in the US and keep training there for Paralympics?
I can tackle that because we run our local program. It really depends on your sport. There are a number of universities that have programs, and if admitted in their master's program, you would be potentially, if your visa is in good standing, with you know, if you're admitted to the university, then you would have your student visa approved and you'd be able to train there. If you are a para-triathlete, your best option is probably at this point San Diego State, I would think. I think they're going to have a program for, presumably you're doing ambulatory running, is that correct? If so, that's probably your best option, is to reach out to San Diego State. If you Google their adaptive sports program, you'll probably get some traction.
So great to meet everyone. My name is Sherry Blauette. I am a retired Paralympic athlete and also a physician based in Boston. In the last session, we talked a little bit about our sort of journey to where we're at now. So I'll just briefly talk about that, if that sounds good, Lucy. You want us to start with that? Seems like a good starting point. So I'm initially from the Midwest, grew up in a pretty rural farming community in Iowa. Discovered adaptive sport when I was in junior high and dabbled a little bit, but ultimately fell in love with the sport of wheelchair racing. Continued to train and to gain skill in the sport. And by the time I was making the jump from high school to college, knew that I really wanted to continue to train and compete in wheelchair racing. And so sought out opportunities to do that. One of the main colleges that offered an adaptive sports program at that time was the University of Arizona in Tucson. So I picked myself up and moved from Iowa down to Arizona. At that time also knew that I had a strong interest in attending medical school. So when I got to U of A, chose a pre-med type major in order to prepare for that. Continued to train and compete and really did this sort of student athlete thing all through undergrad. While I was an undergrad, qualified for my first Paralympics in Sydney in 2000. Through that time, also continued with education and ultimately applied for med school and started school at Stanford out in Palo Alto, California. Also chose to stay out west because it was good, fair weather and offered me the opportunity to continue training year round in a an environment that facilitated both my academic growth but also my sports career. While I was in med school, I took actually a little bit of extra time and continued to compete and did 2 more games in Athens 2004 and Beijing 2008. And after 2008, felt like I was sort of winding down in terms of my athletic career. That then opened things up geographically. And when I graduated med school, decided to move to the East Coast to attend residency in physical medicine and rehabilitation in the Harvard system, and have stayed ever since and joined faculty in 2014. So now I have a clinical sports medicine practice, also involved in research, particularly around Paralympic athletes and injury prevention, and have stayed involved with leadership roles with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, as well as the International Paralympic Committee. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. So we'll pass it on to Dr. Cottingham.
I'm Mike Cottingham. I am an associate professor at the University of Houston, and I conduct research on disability sport and disability, sort of how society sees disability and disability sport and how we can modify those perspectives. My background is I competed in wheelchair tennis at a high level and was also active in wheelchair basketball. I had offers to compete in basketball, but the only real opportunity at that time to compete in tennis was University of Arizona. There was a small program at Ohio State, and Southern Illinois, but I knew I wanted to be at a major state school. I knew the weather was a consideration. I considered Ohio, but Arizona was just a better fit. I wanted to go away to college. I wanted sort of the full college experience. So being from Mississippi, packed up, went 2,000 miles away. And it was an outstanding experience. And I got to be roommates with Dr. Blauett. So additionally, after that, I coached for a number of years. I knew that's the direction I wanted to go to. And then I knew it was time to sort of move on from that. I wanted to go with a more academic route. I went to the University of Southern Mississippi, completed my PhD, and then that took about 5-6 years. Then just a brief time in New Hampshire, and I'm currently at the University of Houston as research faculty.
Great, thank you. And then now for my alma mater, Alex Lawrence.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name's Alex Lawrence. I'm the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid for the full-time MBA program at UCLA Anderson. But to turn back the clock a little bit more, I'm originally from New Jersey, and I mentioned to the group earlier that in my younger days, I was more of a nerd that loved science and mathematics. That's why I pursued my engineering degrees, both bachelor's and master's, at Drexel University there in Philadelphia, and then went to Georgia Tech for my master's in electrical engineering. And sort of zigzagging across the country, I eventually landed up here in California a little over 25 years ago, and eventually went to business school. I felt like I was in the mood, or more looking for a career change, something in the area of business. So I did make a transition and worked in management consulting after business school for about 5 years. Loved my time there at the business school at Anderson, and when the opportunity did present itself, I did make that pivot from consulting into higher education. I've been at UCLA now for over 15 years, and head of admissions close to 10 years now. So I know we'll be getting into many of the things all related to applying to college and looking at graduate school, and I definitely enjoy what I do and meeting people interested in pursuing higher education, like many of you on today's call. So I'm very happy to be here.
Great, thank you. And we're still missing our host. So I will just go ahead and ask the question. So if you could all share with the participants, like how you decided on your undergraduate education. Let's start with Alex, since you're on screen right now. It's my screen.
Sure. So I decided, like I mentioned earlier, it's like I was pretty much all about math and science growing up, like to tinker with things. Had a little bit of exposure to an engineering program, or I should say about what is engineering, when I was in middle school, and I kept pace with that. And so when I was looking at different programs to consider, I sort of thought about a lot of different things. I didn't want to go too far away from my home vicinity. Growing up in the East Coast, wasn't really afraid of snow, obviously. Thought about kind of moving a little bit towards some warmer areas. But for me, in the sort of my high school, it was small to mid-size, and most of the individuals who did go to college, they stayed in New Jersey, going to say like Rutgers. But I wanted to test my waters and go across state lines. So besides Drexel, I did apply to a few schools in Illinois. And eventually what it came down as sort of another consideration set for me, and what I tell people, younger people all the time, is that I was thinking I wanted to explore some things that I might have some interest in, and Drexel has a great co-op program that allows you to work for a year and a half. So during that time, in my 5 years at Drexel, I had a chance to work in a power plant, a coal-fired power plant, a research lab facility, and then also another technical laboratory with AT&T. And I eventually figured out I didn't like any of those. But again, looking back on it, I think one of the sort of my path to, say, the undergraduate space is, and then what I did continue for the graduate programs, was really figuring out, what do I think I wanted to try, and if there was an opportunity that the school provided that would allow me to explore some of those interests.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Cottingham, you want to share your experiences with undergraduate?
Absolutely. So, I wanted an opportunity to play sports in college. I wanted a major state school. I really wanted that full college experience. I knew that disability sport was absolutely part of the experience I wanted to have, but I also knew that it wasn't the only experience I wanted to have. A big skate school would allow for opportunities. I wasn't really fully sure what degree was going to get me to where I wanted to be at that time. So an institution that offered sort of a bit of everything, something that was a little bit away from home, was great weather. Those things were all factors. I think that it was 20 years ago. I think the times have changed in terms of, I figured out kind of where I wanted to go by junior year. And I think most people now have to figure that out a little bit sooner, because structurally, first of all, it's a more expensive process. And it's also structurally sort of designed that you have to know these things sooner. So I would advise anyone who's going through this process to actively look at sort of what majors you're considering and make sure that those institutions are going to align with that. And we see this all the time at my institution. But yeah, a major state school with a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities and a chance to play sports seemed like a really good fit at that time for an 18-year-old Mike Cottingham. So.
Great. And Dr. Blauer?
Yeah, so, a number of things weighed into the decision for me. As I said, I grew up in the Midwest in a fairly rural community, and, frankly, competing in sports in high school was the thing that really sort of broadened my worldview and opened up my perspective a little bit to potentially living in another part of the country and being more open-minded. That most kids I went to high school with definitely stayed local. Most of them still live local. A lot of people don't go too far afield. So sports was really the avenue for me to spread my wings a little bit. And the things that I really valued at the time, I knew that I was interested in a career in medicine, so I wanted to pick a school that would prepare me well for medical school and to have good academic curriculum around that. Certainly wanted to pursue my athletic goals, and not a lot of schools offered track and field or wheelchair racing as part of an adaptive sports program. Really, at the time, the only two were the University of Arizona and the University of Illinois. And then also wanted to, choose something that was practical from a financial standpoint. And when I was looking at different options, Arizona was out of state, but it had, great options in terms of out of state tuition, and it just made sense in that regard. And it wasn't something that seemed too intimidating or not doable from a financial perspective, which is a really important consideration for a lot of students. And so all those things kind of aligned, such that I, chose the University of Arizona. It was also a really exciting time because they were really it was really a time frame when they were launching their adaptive sports program. So it was really exciting to be a part of something that was growing and becoming what is ultimately now a really marquee program here in the U.S. So it's exciting to be a part of that development as well.
Great, thank you. Well, we're going to switch gears now to graduate school. Alex is UCLA Anderson. Maybe you can talk about like what the people need to do to prepare for applying to graduate school, what the process is, and how do they prepare?
Yeah, sure. So thinking about sort of this question, a lot of different ways to approach it. I remember earlier Eric asked me, I was saying like, before people take the plunge. So I think like when you're in undergraduate school and you're still going through the process of like sort of exploring, which is what college is all about in many cases, like finding, trying out new things and figuring out which, again, like I always keep saying, what you like and what you don't like. Graduate school is one of those where you definitely should take advantage of a lot of the different resources that the different graduate programs provide in terms of sharing information, going above and beyond just say what's listed on the website. Many of the best programs do allow individuals to interact with, say, student ambassadors. They also provide other sort of content and opportunities as it relates to maybe sitting in on a class. I think those are all very important because, just taking a step back, when we started talking about all the different graduate school opportunities, med school, law school, business school, For many of those programs, the requirements are different. You may have to take a standardized test. You may have to get letters of recommendations, essays, all kinds of different things. So really engaging with that graduate school program, that department, and trying to figure out how to apply. But, you know, even before that, like, what are your motivations for going to graduate school? Going to law school, the experience is different, as well as the career opportunities. And on the flip side, even at the business school, the opportunities are different, the experience is different. And in that case, majority of the time for graduate business school or getting an MBA, you can't go to that program right after undergrad. Usually that program looks for candidates who have some work experience before returning to graduate school. So I think one of the best ways, like I said, is talking to current students, even engaging with the staff in the different opportunities. But one of the best things too is to talk to people who have those degrees, you know, after they've graduated. See if they're happy as a lawyer or somebody who has an MBA or who is a doctor. You know, we talked earlier about in the other session, and maybe mentioned here, about following your passion. You know, things I think are a lot easier to pursue or to do when you really enjoy what you're doing. You know, what's that passion piece. So not necessarily going and just getting a degree for the sake of getting a graduate degree, because in some cases the time frame for doing so could be multiple years, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So in general, again, talking to people, investigating the program, and then I always tell undergrads, one of the best things that you can do while in college is sort of like kind of do one of your key jobs is getting good grades. It's not always about getting straight A's, but for many of the graduate programs, as they look at some of the requirements, transcripts, they will look at your undergraduate sort of history. So if you're thinking about graduate school, not to put any pressure on you, but, you know, do the best you can because they will look at your grades, but that'll be part of your job. Just, you know, do your job, get good grades, and then engage with those departments to find out what are the opportunities to learn more, and then of course the people to see if that's going to be the right fit for you.
Okay. So Dr. Cunningham, what about when you pursued your doctorate degree? What advice do you have for somebody who's pursuing a PhD? My son is actually starting his PhD program in September at UC Irvine. So what should I tell him?
If he elects to go towards being a faculty member, there's not a better job in the world. It's a job that allows for tremendous flexibility. You kind of get to be your own boss while working with a major institution. You get to be around brilliant people who are all doing brilliant things. You get to choose what you want to do as your research. You get to choose how you want to teach and what you want to teach. The job flexibility in academia is unlike any other industry in the world. You know, I always tell people you can work any 70 hours you want. So it's a lot of time, right? But it's really something you love because you get to choose exactly what you want to study, and you get to choose how you want to tackle it. And you get to be in an institution with young people who are always motivated, who are willing to work in your labs, and who are excited to be there. It's just great energy. I would encourage anyone who has a disability to consider academia. It's an industry that's, I think, very amiable to disability, and it's an industry that needs more disability representation. We're woefully underrepresented in higher education. And so I would hope people would really consider that as well. It's a long road, but your training in a PhD program is nothing like an undergraduate degree. You don't spend years and years taking classes. You spend years sort of conducting your own research and teaching courses on behalf of the institution. And you don't typically pay for a PhD. Often institutions will provide, if you're full-time, will give you an assistantship in exchange for your service to the institution. So, you know, it's a unique training experience. And I think, again, I don't think there's any other job I could love more in the world. So.
I'm sure we'd be happy to hear that. He does want to teach eventually. So.
Outstanding.
Great. And Dr. Blau, we'd love to hear about your decision to become a medical doctor and your experiences in medical school. what advice would you give to somebody who is considering medical school?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think on the whole, it's a fantastic career path. You know, it was something that I knew I had an early interest in it. I was really at a young age inspired by my mom who worked in healthcare. And I remember even when I was a little kid going to visit her at work and always thinking that it was such an exciting environment. And as I got into high school, you know, really enjoyed science and particularly the life sciences, but also knew that I probably wasn't cut out for working in a lab or more of the PhD track. Like I knew that I really liked the interacting with people and being on the front lines. And so, you know, elected to go the pre-med route and then stayed on that path. What I would say is that really only, I'd say over the last 10 years or so, medicine has become more open towards applicants with disabilities and students with disabilities. When I applied, you know, I was certainly the only one that I knew of in my cohort that had a visible disability. And of course, you know, there were probably others that had invisible disabilities that were there, but we didn't know it at the time. And certainly people weren't likely to disclose it at the time. And, you know, looking back as well, I think that being a Paralympic athlete probably helped me quite a bit because it probably lowered the fear factor a little bit for the schools when they were considering my application, and probably helped people at these schools and the admissions committees feel a little bit more comfortable with accepting a student with an obvious visible disability, knowing that I had that athletic background and that I had, you know, obviously demonstrated being able to set goals and achieve goals, etc. Now things are much different, even from the highest level organizations, like for example, the AAMC, which is the American Association of Medical Colleges. There's more and more being published, more white papers, more talks at conferences, like a lot of conversations around the importance of disability as a critical element of diversity in medicine, and that's being embraced by more schools when they think about their admissions criteria and how they interview applicants. And ultimately, it's being seen as, you know, when we think about the healthcare workforce overall, understanding that, you know, we understand the importance of having a diverse workforce because it enables us to provide better care to diverse patients. And that needs to be inclusive of disability as well. And I think that had been overlooked for a very long time, and really we're now just starting to turn the corner. So I'd encourage anyone with a disability or not who thinks they may have a interest in medicine or a passion for medicine to go for it. And particularly for high school students and undergraduates with disabilities, I would, you know, feel optimistic that if you put your best foot forward, you know, good grades, strong CV, good test scores, etc., that I think you'll have a great shot at it. And so, you know, it's a great field, and I encourage everyone to apply.
Thanks a lot. So just to everyone in the panel, if there was one single piece of advice you could give to the young people in our panel today, what would that be that would help them in their education path? Does anybody want to start? Okay, I will pick one.
Sure, I'll
okay.
Sure, I'll kick things off. Like, you know, I was thinking about this the last time, and that was asked, and I thought that, you know, I didn't visit all of my opportunities when I was looking at the different schools for a variety of reasons. So the only school that I did visit was the one I eventually picked. So if you do get that opportunity to visit different schools, different opportunities, even ones you may not even be seriously considering, I think sort of seeing when you can possibly seeing sort of the environment, and again, getting a good sense of seeing yourself there possibly will go a long way in sort of like making your final decision. Like again, for a lot of the people on the West Coast, it's like, again, when the time presents itself, you know, visiting a school in the springtime, that's a cold weather sort of school, may be sort of just a little bit short-sighted. You should definitely try to visit the school on its worst winter day to see if you, especially if you grow up in a warm climate, to see if you can see yourself going through that experience. But, you know, visiting the campus, if it's a small school, big school, whatever it is, just to get a good sense of like what that environment is, would be, I think, something that you have to definitely to do service for yourself.
Okay. Dr. Blau?
Yeah, I think, my one advice would probably be to, pick a path that you're passionate about, and that makes sense for you, but also don't be afraid to explore. I think looking back, I was pretty linear about my path. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think the nonlinear aspect of my experience was the fact that I did continue to compete. So I was really living that student athlete lifestyle, and that in and of itself was unique. So I took some leaves of absence to compete at the Paralympics, for example, and that was fairly non-traditional. But I always knew that sports and competing was something that I was very passionate about, and it would have never worked for me to leave one of those paths behind, and so just continue to plow forward with both. But as it relates to my career in medicine, I think that these structures are set up for people to follow a linear path. You go to undergrad, you pick a major, you apply to med school, you matriculate to med school, you go there for 4 years, you go to residency, etc. But there are so many ways to use a medical degree now. You have people with MDs who, of course, practice clinical medicine or do research, but also hospital administrators and people working in public policy and people working for foundations, people doing international medicine. There's just so many ways in which you can use the degree ultimately that I just encourage people to, whether it's a medical degree or other graduate degrees, to really think outside the box and not feel so constrained by this linear path that people set out for you.
That's a very good point. Dr. Cottingham?
So, I have some familiarity with a number of the collegiate disability sports programs, and, I talk to some of the students who go in and out. My suggestion is if you're competing in disability sport and going to college, just make sure that you plan for when your competitive career ends, right? Because I was just thinking about people that I went to school with. The vast majority were done within 4 years of graduating. Somewhat, maybe they competed at a high level for 12 years, but it doesn't matter. Even the best, there's a day when sports ends, or at least it ends at an elite competitive level. And you want to have a career, you want to have a vocation, you want to have a direction. And I have seen folks who have competed at a high level or tried to compete at a high level, and then they really struggled with their identity and finding a career path after that. So as you're in school, make sure that that time isn't just competition, but it's also thinking about what will I do post-competitive career, whether that's 2 years after school or 25 years after school.
That's a great point. Now, I think just back to what Dr. Blatt was saying earlier about just taking a linear path. I guess this question was what's the biggest mistake, or if you had a chance to do over your educational journey, what would that be? I don't know if you have other things that you want to add to your point earlier, Dr. Blatt.
Yeah, I think the two dovetails. So I'd say I do think that I followed a fairly linear path, and I again, sports being the exception, and that gave me plenty of travel and adventure and a lot of fun along the way. But as it relates to the academic aspect, I think I always somewhat felt constrained by what other people expected. And hindsight's 20/20, and maturity brings confidence. So I think looking back, that I probably frankly didn't have the confidence to say like, no, that's not the way I want to go, or I want to take it a different direction. And so I'd encourage young people to really think about, that there are, especially once you're out of school, you're working towards a degree, there's so many ways to take it and to not feel constrained by that. The other thing I'd say is that for me, I think Mike could attest to this because we were in college at the same time. I was a pretty hard worker. I actually look back, I think that maybe the biggest mistake I made was not having enough fun in undergrad. Like I studied a lot, I worked really hard. I built up the CV as every student does. And I think, looking back, I wish I'd maybe taken a few more breaths of fresh air and enjoyed it. I did enjoy it greatly, but just had even a bit more adventure, because it's really the time of life when, it's the best time of life to really just get out there and enjoy it. And, have some late nights, enjoy your friends, travel, and, work hard, but also make sure you kind of look outside of that and really take it all in. Would you say, Mike, I work too hard?
You definitely worked harder than I did. That's for sure.
Right, that's definitely true. I can attest.
So Dr. Cottingham, do you have anything to add, like, anything that you think you would like to do over, or,
Yes, I'll mirror image the opposite of what Sherry said, which is I think that you have to make sure. Yeah, and I think you have to know who you are going into school. I became a really good student. I had a few years where I was not as motivated a student, right? Where my investment was definitely, I did not come in with the 15-year plan like Sherry did. And what that meant was I had to do a lot of catch up later. And I could have saved myself some trouble on the front end and approached that freshman, sophomore year better. And I think you don't have to be a 4.0 student, but you need to make sure that you put yourself in a position to reach your career goals. Because I think the world's even much more competitive. Like it kills me when we look at PhD students right now and we deny students. And I'm like, wow, that we literally denied them because they had 2 bad semesters their freshman year as an undergrad. And they now have, they have a 3.5 GPA overall, which is not bad from their undergrad, but it's because they had 2 awful semesters. And they had a 4.0 in their master's degree, and we've now denied them from this program. So I just think if you are someone who's a hard worker, like Sherry said, have that fun. But if you're someone that has a little too much fun, don't have too much fun. So that would be my recommendation.
Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I was a little bit of probably had the blinders on in my undergrad and just really focusing on my coursework. So I didn't really know about some of the other opportunities to take advantage of. Kind of shared offline earlier. I was just like, I knew nothing about, say, a study abroad program as an example. So I was just all into my books, taking calculus 1 through 4 and physics 1 through 4 and everything in that engineering program. But then once I did get to business school, I did jump at that opportunity to, say, live abroad and really spread my wings. It's a lot different nowadays, but that's one thing looking back. And I tell again, students who look at sort of that opportunity when you're in college to kind of look at what's available and don't just necessarily just kind of have the blinders on and just stay within your major department school or even within, say, your dorm and friends. Get out there and explore a little bit.
Okay, so we have about 9 minutes before the session ends. So I just want to open it up to see if anybody has questions. Actually, maybe we can share one of the questions that came up in the earlier session. The question was really in this time of COVID, when a lot of the learning has gone remote, would you recommend going the community college route instead of going straight to college, like a regular university? Alex, you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So I think going to community college is a fantastic opportunity as well. If it's the right fit, you don't necessarily feel obligated to jump at, say, the traditional model, say a 4-year school. Plus, some programs have some great online opportunities as well. So I mentioned to the last group that I'm very impressed by those students who transfer into, say, the UCLA campus. That's sort of on my only purview. Very impressed because they've taken advantage of, say, the community college experience, and they've made that transition to, say, the larger, bigger university and campus. So I would say don't necessarily feel the pressure that you have to go to, say, a traditional, say, 4-year program. Community colleges these days, there's a lot of great programs here in California, and I'm sure around the country that you can take an advantage of, take a look at, and if it's the right fit, by all means, explore it and think about what would you like to do with it afterwards.
Okay, great. Anything to add, Dr. Blower or Dr. Cottingham?
The research says that students that are successful at the community college level are students with a lot of support or exceptionally high motivated. So if you were actually saying what prototypical student does best at a community college, like community colleges don't have a great rate of matriculation to universities, but there's plenty of students that do it, but you have to be really highly motivated. What a university has that some community colleges don't have is resources to really help mentor you through that process. So if you were a strong student or you're just going into community college and you're like, I am ready to hit it hard, it's a great resource. The average student actually does a little better going straight to university, but clearly there's a much higher expense there. So that is a consideration for families and participants.
Thank you. Dr. Bauer, anything to add or last word?
Yeah, no, I don't have a ton to add. I'd just say that, you know, I definitely, particularly the, in the graduate school route that I took, you know, traditional high school to undergrad, undergrad to med school to residency. You know, one thing that is a reality for a lot of people on that trajectory, and I think many other grad school trajectories as well, is just the financial aspect of that. And, you know, the impact of, you know, paying significant tuition for many years and deferring being a person who generates income. And it's a little different if you go the grad school route, as Mike said, because a lot of PhD programs, you know, you are paid along the way. So it's a little bit of a different calculus. But, you know, I've seen the impact on people and their families when they do take on such tremendous debt. And so I think that, you know, in the context of the comments from Alex and Mike, you know, for those motivated students for whom community college may make more sense, both from the standpoint of like planning for the ultimate trajectory, but also the financial aspects. You know, I think it can be a very pragmatic choice and a great choice. And debt does matter. You know, debt impacts a lot of different things, and it can be really tough for a lot of students. So, so you know, if that's one of the considerations, then I think, you know, it can be a very, very wise choice for a lot of students.
Very true. So, last call for questions from the participants. I know you're all on mute, so just feel free to unmute yourself if you have questions to ask. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'll give you 10 seconds.
I'd like to just maybe comment or dovetail off what Sherry just said. I think that's a really big point about that piece. Just again, because I'm on the graduate school side, and just over the last 4 or 5 years, seeing more and more applicants applying to graduate school, and in some cases, even after being admitted, really struggling or figuring out if they can even attend because they're coming in with so much student debt. Even though that different graduate programs like UCLA Anderson do have fellowships to make it more affordable, but that student debt piece can be something that can really weigh you down long after you finish from undergrad, let alone like say some other graduate school program taking on more debt. So
yeah, definitely.
Good. So I don't see any questions from the chat, and I haven't seen anybody chime in or raise their hand. So we're just going to wrap it up then. On behalf of the Angel City Virtual Games presented by the Hartford, I wanted to thank our panelists for sharing their time and expertise with us tonight. I also want to thank all of you who tuned in.